All right, guys, we're live. Hey, guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. This is where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. How today we're having Charles Love, and we're going to be having an interesting conversation that started out on Twitter. A lot of people would see me these days and think maybe I've become a communist with my tweets on capitalism and socialism and communism on Twitter. And Charles reached out and said that we needed to have a conversation, right, on capitalism and maybe on some other stuff as well. There's been a lot of things going on around Twitter. There's been conversations around race, conversations around economy, everything. So today, majorly, we're going to be focusing on capitalism. Let's go through what exactly is capitalism, what are its features, what are its merits, what are the demerits, how is it being practiced, what's its relationship with say with democracy, with imperialism. These and many more, and probably if we have time we'll go into the rest stuff. So Charles, welcome to the conversation. How are you doing?
I am doing well. That's a long intro. No, I'm doing great. It's good to chat. Like you said, this conversation came out of Twitter because, as we were talking before, Twitter is a good mechanism to get conversations started, but it's bad to actually have a conversation. So you can't get anything done. You can't really learn from each other, outside of all the fights and all that kind of stuff that happen. It's just not enough words. It's not real time. Somebody reads a post 45 minutes later, all that kind of thing. So, it's a good, thought provoking thing. It's a good conversation starter, but it's not an actual conversation. So, like you said, which doesn't happen that often, you were tweeting about capitalism, communism, all these things. And I was making my typical standard one word or better, just GIF responses. And then after one, I was like, we should talk about this. And then you sent me a string guard. So then here I am.
Yeah.
So I guess since I said it, I guess I should set up because you want to get into the definitions and all that. I think it's important to talk about, to start off by talking about why I think it's important to understand the distinction. And if any of you, I don't know how many of your viewers or listeners have seen my stuff, they know I take a slightly different approach to things. I have an opinion on everything, just like anyone else. One, what's unique about me is I don't think, not that I'm giving my, think I'm so important and other people think they're important. So it's not like I'm saying my opinion doesn't matter, but I don't think I need to share my opinion on everything. Where on Twitter, it seems like everyone has an opinion on everything. I'm just like, I see some stories, I got an opinion, don't really care. But beyond that, it seems like, because a lot of it is reactionary, it's hard to tell, is someone responding that way to prove a point because the person who made the initial post left something out, or do they completely disagree with everything they're saying? It's not always easy to tell. So I was saying that because capitalism, there's like 3 or 4 topics that come up like this in capitalism. Is one where people are either overly celebrating it or people are, saying it's bad and this, that, or the other. And I'm like most things, it's somewhere in the middle. And I just, thought it'd be important to find one to clear the air on that, but to also get a better understanding of what you meant by the responses of capitalism, because I don't want to attack you if I'm taking it out of context. So I think there were, I don't remember, because we've had some race ones and we've had some capitalist ones. So, but in that, somebody was probably singing the praises of capitalism, and you would say something like, how is that any different? How is that better than communism? Or communism would be this. Or what about colonialism and imperialism and things of that nature? So why don't you, I mean, I don't hate to be the interviewer, it's your show, but give me the context of the replies, and then I will give you my thoughts on it.
Oh, great. So the overarching narrative, why I started this kind of conversation, right, this sort of trend, was that I told myself this year that I wanted to challenge everything that I ever believed, right, everything that I understood. I wanted to challenge everything, right? I wanted to see if they were correct, if there were some things that were missing out. Please. So that led me to just studying or checking out information on capitalism and the claims that it makes, right? Or capitalism affords freedom, it affords the path to success, it aligns with democracy and so many other things. And then the flip side, communism is bad, socialism is bad. I mean, in America, you can't be a communist for the life of me. And so, I don't think politically you get anywhere if you describe yourself as a communist or even a socialist for that matter. And then there are certain policies that, there are certain policies that if you just attach the name socialism to it, it's like it's dead on arrival, right? And then there is the one that really got me the most was the claim that communism is bad because it has led to the deaths of 100 million people. So I looked at that one.
Oh
A
yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
That
So
might have been the one because then you were like, well, capitalism has killed more people.
I looked at it and I was like, is this
Thanks
really
for
true? I mean,
refreshing my memory.
yeah. So that is something that I've believed for the longest time up until this year, up until like 2 months ago, right? I've believed that capital communism was really that bad, and because of the fact that it has killed that much people. But then I looked at it and say, well, is that the economic system working, or was it the political machinery working, right? And then you come to capitalism itself. With all the things that's going on with capitalism, is capitalism strictly an economic model, or is it a hybrid of both economics and and politics, right? And I found out that somehow both capitalism and communism are exactly the same thing. They are both social, economic, and political systems, right? And at times the politics or the economics drive political action. And I found out that capitalism itself is not so much removed from imperialism. There are a lot of imperialist interactions, right, that has happened across the world that were driven by a desire for economic good, that were driven by a desire for economic. You can use the example of the UFC, the United Fruit Company in Guatemala, how the US overthrew the democratically elected government of Guatemala to protect the economic interest of a US company called the United Fruit Company, right? That company owned 42% of the land in Guatemala. They were exempted from paying taxes. They were also exempted from paying import duties. And when a government came in that was not so favorable to those policies, somehow the US intervened and it led to the death of about 250,000 people. So when you look at it, will you say, oh, that's not capitalism working? That's something else. But when it comes to communism, you look at it and you say, oh, well, all the evils that happened under communism is as a result of communism. But all the evils that happens under capitalism is an aberration. It's something else. It's really not capitalism, it's something else. So I just wanted that consistency, right? I think all economic systems produce death as a byproduct, right? So using the number of deaths is not a distinguishing feature. We can use some other things and say this is why capitalism is better than communism. But telling me that communism is bad because it has led to the deaths of 100 million people, it's false. Capitalism has killed even more, and I can give more examples, right? So that's sort of the basis for my conversations on Twitter around this topic.
Well, it's good to hear that. It's good for the clarification because obviously that's why you can't assume, because I didn't come in at the beginning of that conversation that don't know what the genesis was, but I saw several tweets about that. I think the problem with this and the reason it gets so convoluted is because there are two things at play, and we can address both if you like, but they're not the same in the sense that I get where you say if capitalism is used in a bad manner, people will say, well, that's not capitalism. But then if the same happens with communism, they'll say, no, that's communism. And I understand the political aspect of it because it's so big. Any economic system, whatever you're using, is going to affect everyone. So it's so big that at some point politics is going to touch it, because look at it, politics is part of everyone's life. You can't get away from it, regardless of what type of society you're in. So that is a major component, and that needs to be addressed. But I think if you're going to compare anything else, if you're going to compare the systems, not the only, but one of the best, and probably the way to start is to look at each in a vacuum, right? So we not ignore the politics of it, but address that secondarily. So initially just say, because I've said this before, I say technically, I think I know, but I don't think we talked about it, so I don't want to assume, but I think I know your views on people and human nature, and we can get to that because that's an important part. Before you even get to politics, before you get to the economic system, is what is this is your Charles and your collectively view on the human condition. Because if you, and it doesn't really matter from a religious standpoint, right? Because if you're a Christian and you believe that there's an original sin, and it's not slavery, by the way, but you're born in sin and you need God to save you. Or if you're an atheist and you don't believe that, but you still think that there's some problems with human nature, or you think people are inherently good and they learn these bad characteristics by seeing it in the environment, right? By being taught it directly. Whatever the case may be, we all agree that at some point people do some things they're not supposed to do, right? So really the question is, absent that, unless you can fix that, some of that's going to creep into all the systems, and we can get into that in detail. So before I get to that, I say, okay, so if we know that people do some of those things, we have to address it. And then you can look at each system and say, which is best suited to work around the things that you can't control. But back to in a vacuum, if you look at here, they're closely aligned, but I'm going to separate communism and socialism, and not say communism, socialism, and capitalism. Say you talk about individual rights and property ownership. You talk about the means of production being owned by the people, right, or being owned by the government. And I've said that in a vacuum, without the human flaws, all of them would work, right? Really, not necessarily one better than another. Now, some will say one's better than the other because of their preference, right? But they would all work. But we don't live in a vacuum, right? So the problem would be, like you say, you can point out problems with capitalism. Without a doubt, you will have more poverty with capitalism, or a bigger wealth gap in a sense than other systems, right? So you're going to have, it doesn't mean the poor will be poorer than, but you will have poor people and very rich people. You won't have very rich people as a large group in the other two, but not at all, right? Because if you're talking about history, as you did before, in these countries that are communist or socialism, are socialist, and they try to create a society where people are equal, right? Each according to his need. They all have what they need to survive. Are there still wealthy people? Right? Most of us would say yes, right? There's a smaller group of them, but where do they come from? Right? If you go to the Bible, you talk about the tax collectors, right? You look at the tax collectors, you had the tax collectors were Jews, right? They were collecting taxes from other Jews at the behest of the Romans. The Romans had them under the thumb. And so a lot of Jews would probably be mad at the tax collector, like, come on, how are you taking these taxes from us and giving it to him? But that wasn't the only problem, right? The other problem was the Romans were like, as long as I got my cut and you gave to Caesar what you owed Caesar, we don't really care if you got a little extra for yourself, right? So the problem, that's the problem with, let's say, so let's start with socialism. The problem with everyone owning the means of production, what happens when they own the means of production, but they're all still not equal, right? Some people would still have to, there have to be people who let's say lead, or they have different jobs, and someone puts the widgets together and someone manages the production of it and make sure things are done the way they're supposed to be done. Do we make sure that that the manager, quote unquote, is equal to the worker, or does he get a slightly larger piece of the pie? Right? There's going to be people who don't have the same work ethic, work at the same pace, work in the same, do the same quality of work. How do we treat that? And then quickly to the government, if nothing else, Twitter will give you plenty of examples, regardless of your politics, of the problems with government. So as much as we rail against these evil billionaires, um, there's plenty of examples of government not really living out what they should, and they're elected. So the business owner did not start his business to do the best for blacks or poors or white people, all these groups of people. But the government official was elected to represent his people, and in many cases they do not. So I'm going to go back to you, but give you a couple quick examples we can talk of. And I like to use left and right because I don't want people to say it's a political thing. But I always joke that in order to run for president, you have to be a narcissist. Not necessarily 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Truman probably wasn't. A couple others, Coolidge wasn't. But, since like 84, 88, you pretty much have to be. So Trump happens to wear his on his sleeve so you can see it all, right? And so we can make a case that Trump is different. Maybe yes, maybe no. But I would argue that Biden ran for president. I'm not going to give him a knock for that. He won. At his age and his competence, he can see now he's done the job. So he knows how difficult it is, and he can feel the demands. He should be like, all right, I'm good. I'm gonna pass the baton to someone else. But he just announced he's running. Fetterman could have easily stepped out of office, right? But he did not, because he's not doing it because, man, I'm not feeling well, but there's no one competent enough to do this job but me, so I have to do it. He's doing it because he wants to do it. Feinstein, right? Ruth Bader Ginsburg. People are like, please step down because of your age, or politically because we want Obama to appoint somebody before Trump comes in. But, she did what was best for her. So I don't understand how people can say that individual rights and people owning businesses can be greedy, 100% fact. And therefore, the solution would be just to have government do it because, they have everyone's best interest at heart.
Okay, so there's a lot said there. So let me start with, I think, a straw man that's usually, thrown at socialism or communism. And the straw man is that socialism wants equality for everyone. And there's usually said that everybody will be equally poor. Well, that's just bollocks.
Well, I never said equally poor.
No.
But they do want equality. Are you saying socialism doesn't want equality?
No, socialism doesn't want equality.
So what does socialism want?
Socialism wants each according to their needs and each according to their abilities.
Who dictates the need?
That's not equality. No, who that's the principle. I'll get there. But that's the principle, right? That's the principle of socialism. It's not equality across board. Now, when we look at socialist countries in principle, right, what we see is not the poverty that you are thinking about. Let's use the case of Libya, for example, before Gaddafi was overthrown in 2011. Before Gaddafi came into power, right, Libya was a mess. It was controlled by foreign interests and what have you. For the 40 years that Gaddafi ruled, is it 40 or so? I can't remember the number of years he ruled. He was able to transform Libya, right, from a third world country to a high income country. In fact, had the highest development index in the whole of the continent of Africa. Libya had the highest literacy rates. There was no homelessness in Libya. Healthcare was guaranteed for everyone, right? The quality of life in Libya, in fact, there were less people living under poverty in Libya than they were in the Netherlands. Libya was a socialist country. So it wasn't, people were not equally poor, right? So the idea
but stop. Now on my show I don't challenge people, but I'm the guest, so I can talk. You say a straw man, but you're saying things that I didn't say, so that's not fair.
I made the distinction. I made the distinction.
But hold on. You are mixing the two also. So you're saying everyone had healthcare. So you're just throwing these things out and blending them together. So everyone had healthcare, right? That is what you said, right? That everyone had healthcare. Of course,
everyone had healthcare. Everyone had access to.
No, I just want to verify that's what you said. So who managed to maintain the healthcare system?
Who maintained the healthcare system
in Libya? That's your example.
It's the government.
But that's not socialism.
That's what that. Okay, socialism is the people themselves.
So you're mixing the two.
No, I'm not.
I'm using the example you're giving me. So Libya. What was Gaddafi's worth?
What was Gaddafi's worth? I can't tell whatever his worth is. I can't tell what his worth. Of course, he was wealthy, right?
Was there a wealthy class?
Yeah, there were wealthy classes. Yes.
Yeah, and how did they become wealthy?
I don't know. I don't know how
Yeah,
they
but that's
became wealthy.
important though, Charles, because if you're saying that capital, because compare it to, so you're giving me so you're doing the same thing that you claim the capitalists are doing. You're
No,
giving me all the,
no.
no, let me finish. You're giving me all the fluff. You're like, look, there's no poverty. Look, there was healthcare. Look, no one said everyone has to be equal, but Gaddafi was extremely wealthy. Yes. Was there a wealthy class? Yes. How did they get wealthy? Did they produce anything? I don't really know. That's
That's not
important.
the problem.
But that's important. Were they
But that's not the
wealthy?
problem.
Let me finish, and then y'all get. Were they wealthy because Gaddafi made them wealthy because they were in his inner circle, or were they wealthy because they did something to amass wealth?
I can't answer that.
But
It
that's
might be
important
either of
because
both.
there's a difference between them being wealthy because they created the spoon and no one else had created a spoon, and they sold 40 million spoons, so they became wealthy. So because somebody wanted their product or service, or they became wealthy because Gaddafi tapped them on the head.
Okay, so let me respond. So it doesn't matter how they became wealthy. What matters,
That's
what
laughable.
matters, no, what matters is that everyone is taken care of, or at least most people are taken care of. In a capitalist system, you're still going to find whatever you have just described. The politicians, many of these politicians, how are they millionaires with their politician salaries? How are they millionaires? Right?
But a
That's going to
politician
happen
being
anyway.
millionaire is not capitalism. We're not arguing whether people mess up or people right or wrong. We're arguing economic systems, correct?
Economic systems, you cannot divorce it from the political
But you
system.
have
They
to
are
because
intertwined.
then it's not capitalism. Because then I can
You
defend
can't.
all three. It's not capitalism,
No, you
socialism,
can't.
or communism.
See,
It's government
capitalism,
intervention. It's bad government
capitalism,
across the board.
capitalism is a social, political, and economic movement. It's not just the economics itself.
But, but,
There's a
but if
political
okay,
aspect
so
to
if we
it.
use your argument, there's no defense. There's no argument. All three are the same because governments entwined and took over all of them,
Of
hence calling it
course,
capitalism. So they're
of
all the
course,
same.
of course. That's the
So
point.
then there's no
That
argument.
was the point I was
But then there's
getting
no
at.
argument.
There is an argument because one side thinks the other side is bad for doing exactly the same things that they are doing. I'm just pointing
No,
out the
you're
contradiction.
mixing arguments, Charles.
I
People
am
who
not.
are arguing the specific implied definitions of them. You are, even though it's true, wrongly for the argument, adding the government in and saying
You
capitalism is not,
cannot.
not,
You
not better
cannot
because look at
divorce
what the government
politics.
did. Even in
You
your
can't
Guatemala
divorce
example,
politics.
you gave me the government.
You can't divorce politics from the economy.
Well,
It's not
but we're
possible.
talking
It's
in
literally
circles.
not
I
possible.
never said you can divest the two because they're definitely far
So
too
what are you
connected
arguing
now.
against?
But you can't
What are you?
then argue in defense of capitalism. I mean, in any of them, but in defense of communism by saying, "Look at what the government did,"
No.
and you can't
No.
divorce the two
See,
because then you're not
you
you're
get my
not
point.
really arguing the different economic principles. You're arguing government. It's a different argument.
No. See, please get my
Yes.
point. My point is not saying communism is better or socialism is better, right? My point is
That was
saying
your
that,
point on Twitter.
yeah, okay,
I
so
didn't make you tweet it.
that's a secondary point, right? And I can prove why it is, right? There is no
And
economic
communism
system.
and capitalism didn't kill anybody either.
There is no economic system that exists without a political machinery. In capitalism, it is said to be quote unquote democracy, but we all know that really it's imperialism, right? For example, what you have with Great Britain, with Imperial Japan, it always had to do with the exploitation of other regions, taking their wealth and all that. We can argue about that, but that's exactly the truth, right?
So so
Many
so
of
is so
many
so is
of
the
let me finish. Sorry, many of the companies, many of the African colonies, right, that Britain had, the people that went to those colonies, they started out as private um, capitalist ventures or endeavors, and then they expanded into whatever the British now has or the British had as their colonies, right? Those were all capitalist adventures. You cannot separate the economic system from the political system. That's my point. So when capitalists to say, "Oh, this is politics." It's not politics. It's the system as a whole. That is what it produces. It cannot function in a vacuum. We can argue about the theory of both, right? We can argue that, okay, for example, one of the core tenets of capitalism is the free market. But we all know that there is no such thing as the free market. It's made up, because the free market doesn't exist, right? There's government regulations, there's subsidies, there are tax breaks. There are so many interventions that the government have to do, intervene in the economy, that makes it not to be a free market. So we can talk theory, or we can talk what it really is in practice. And if you want to talk what it really is in practice, you cannot separate the economic system from the political machinery. That's my point.
So what's the difference?
What's the difference?
Yeah.
Between
There's really them all have
there really is no difference.
Okay, stop. So if there's no difference, what's the argument?
The argument is that one side is claiming superiority. I'm not saying you have a side. We're talking about capitalism.
No, I'm saying, but I'm not asking what people are saying. What's the difference?
I don't even have a side.
If there's no difference, the whole argument is moot. What's the point?
Yeah. What's the
what's
point?
The next topic?
So this
topic is done.
The point is about capitalism, right? The point is the claims that capitalists make, right? The point is the point is to
claim that capitalism is what?
Capitalists claim that, there's freedom, there's equality.
You're back to mixing again. We're going in circles again. They're not talking about the government, and then you say you can't. So either you cannot have the debate, or you need to have the debate with the parameters that they're having the debate. That's the problem. So you want to allow them to have a ring match battle royale between the three economic systems in a vacuum and see who helps the most people. You say, but you can't do it in a vacuum. In theory, in reality, you can't do it in a vacuum. But if that's the case, then you can't have the debate, because you're not debating the same things. You're debating real world on the ground. What happens when people are sliding money and bribing people, which really happened. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but you're arguing that against somebody who's arguing the principle, and you're saying they're different. That is true. Yes, it is, because they're talking about the economic system separate from government, and you said, well, you can't separate the government, right? Isn't that what you're saying?
Because
so then you can't have the debate, because you're not debating the same thing. You're arguing apples and oranges.
No, yes, I am. See, Charles, listen to me. I am saying, okay, so if we want to argue on the principles of both systems, right? Yes. Let us argue on the principles of both systems. If we want to argue on actuality, for example, I said that in an article that I wrote, I say you cannot separate authoritarianism from communism. They go in practice. They go hand in hand.
You can't
just as you can. You cannot separate dictatorship. You can't separate dictatorship, authoritarianism from communism. In practice, they go hand in hand. For you to have a communist system, it has to be an autocratic regime. Right. There's no how you're going to have that level of government control without some authoritarian bent to it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
You understand? That's what it is in practice. In theory, it actually wasn't supposed to be that way, right? Because the ultimate goal,
are you saying it's impossible to have communism? Is it impossible to have
communism? See, the ultimate goal of communism is a stateless, cashless society, right? Where there is no government, there is no state. That's the ultimate goal, right? But that's the theory. But in practice, you can't have that. So also in capitalism. In capitalism, in theory, it's the free market. Let the market forces decide, right? Let the person who has the superior product, let him take it all. That's the way it's supposed to be. And capitalism naturally tends to monopoly. But we have antitrust laws, which is fundamentally anti-capitalist. Because why is the government breaking up? Why is the government breaking up companies, right?
Can I ask you a basic question? Because we all agree on that. So that's we're wasting our time. Stop. I agree with the one half. You didn't complete it. What you did was a little trickery. I'm disappointed. Charles, you don't play like this normally. Why are you doing this? So listen to what you said. You said it is impossible to have communism without a dictatorship or authoritarian regime.
Yeah.
And then you said, then capitalism isn't truly capitalism because you have antitrust laws. I need the apples to apples. What I needed you to say was, what I need to make it clear. Stop. I need this to be clear. I need you to finish it this way. You cannot, and I'm not putting this in with, tell me if I'm right or wrong. You can say you don't believe that. You can say you cannot. It's totally impossible. You cannot have communism without this. And then you need to say, and on the other hand, to keep it equal, you cannot. It is physically impossible to have capitalism without authoritarian.
Without imperialism. It is physically impossible to have
That's true. That's
capitalism
not true.
without imperialism.
That's factually inaccurate. That's not true.
That's not factually inaccurate.
Sure it is.
The
So you
facts are
telling
there-
me
the
that it's
facts are
impossible
there
to have free trade unless the government picks winners and losers.
Yes.
That's not true. People
That's
are,
true.
see, you're making a mistake now of
That's
saying because
exactly
people
true.
are doing it, which goes back to human nature, that means it's impossible to do it
Then
without
I
it.
can use the human nature to argue for communism. You can go back and say that's human nature. Whatever happened under communism is human nature. You can't blame
No,
the
no, that's
communist
different
system.
because the communism literally says government owns. So how can you not have government owned without the government? Explain that to me.
So is government naturally bad?
No, it's not about it being bad, but you
so-
have to have it in order to.
So-
You do
so
not have to have it in order.
It is
in
still
order
the
to do-
people acting in government. It's still people. People are the ones pursuing those policies.
I know,
People
but
are the ones doing anything. It's still people.
I said that earlier at the beginning when you said communism was great because those people are better than the capitalist people, right? So dictators are better than Elon Musk. They're better people. We'd rather have a dictator than Elon Musk. You said that, not me. I never
that's not
said
what I'm
that
saying.
government wasn't people.
That's not
In
what
fact,
I'm
I
saying.
said that government was people. What I'm saying is government is government. Okay, yes or no answers. Is government in the definition of communism?
Is government in the definition of communism? No.
No.
It's
so
not.
what is the
It's not.
textbook definition of communism? What is it?
So the textbook
The
definition
means
of
of
communism
production is owned by whom?
Okay, so when the means of production is owned by I think by the government, yeah.
So that's government. So government is government in the definition of capitalism.
No, it's not.
But you say they're the same. Because in practice, the way people have bastardized it made it the same. So therefore,
because in practice, right, the government is embedded in.
Now we're back to practice again. I'm talking it. So both of them are doing it in practice, according to you. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But then I say, are both of them doing it? So let's just go to the core definition of the original intent. Is the government in both? And then you're trying to find a way to force them both in, and it's not.
No, I'm not trying to. I'm trying to understand your question. So maybe you could reframe it again and I'll answer it.
You yourself said you can't have communism without government. I agree with you. I said, of course, it's literally in the definition. I said, can you have capitalism without government? You say, no, you can't. I'm like, you can. And then you went into defining how we don't. I never said we didn't. You said it is physically impossible to have it without, and I disagree. You can have capitalism without the government.
So
that was very. Okay, let me finish it. Very little government. You don't have. So you can have 3 or 4 laws and say this is what we want the government to protect, and end it at that, without lobbying, without eminent domain, without trade policies, and you can physically do it. Now, when people eventually say I want more, yes, but you could do it. You cannot pour water in communism without the government.
Show me how capitalism can exist without the government.
What do you mean how?
Show me how.
Well, I didn't say with no government at all. I said the government would not be primary like in communism.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, so
all the government needs to do in capitalism is to protect people's rights. So it talks about individual rights. Their job is to protect those rights.
Let me show you the number of government subsidies to companies in
I don't need to see them because I know they exist and I hate them. So, but your problem is
$1 billion in subsidies.
Why are we going in circles? Your problem, no. I know they exist. I don't need you to show me. The problem is you're saying they're necessary. That's the only way the government works is if you give somebody a subsidy. That's totally not true.
See. Capitalism, as it is today in practice, would not be possible without government intervention, without government stake, without government being a key player, either in the form of regulation, either in form of helping it out militarily, either in the form of subsidies, either in the form of tax breaks or any other thing. What you have today in practice as capitalism is highly influenced by the government.
Of course it is, but it doesn't have to be. They don't have to. They have to be involved. But what they are now, they're more than involved. They're an active participant. They don't have to be, but they don't have to be an active participant. In communism,
So
they
I
have
need
to
you
be
to
an
show
active
me.
participant.
I need you to show me a place where capitalism is
Oh,
practiced,
it's been
where
so
the
smooth
government
since
is
then.
not.
You have to go back. But really, all they would do is that people would own their intellectual property and their physical property. They
That's
would.
fairy
They would.
tale. That's not. That's fairy tale. That's not what's happening.
I don't. You're not letting me finish.
Oh, sorry. Go
They would
ahead.
own this
Sorry.
stuff, property, right? They
Mm.
would have written deeds. The government would be there as a secondary to enforce what they have, not to be like you say there are today, deciding which businesses like during COVID can be open and which ones can be closed, not bailing people out because they're too big to fail, not giving subsidies. You're right. Not these. What did Trump do with the not having trade embargoes and things of that nature? They do all that. You're right. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm saying that part's not necessary. Can you have no government? No, because then you have the Wild West, and I would own property, and somebody would shoot me in the face and take it, and there would be nobody to say the law says you can't shoot them in the face and take the property. But
No,
that's passive.
capitalism.
That's different from being
Capitalism
what you're complaining
is
about is or
fundamentally.
what you're complaining about is an active role, right? Which is what we have now. And I don't. And I'm my argument is that it is not necessary in capitalism. It is
So
the number one principle of
okay,
communism.
it is not necessary. Can you give me an example of capitalism in play where the government has not have
Well,
had
right
an active
now,
role? Yeah,
right
give me
now,
an example.
right
What
now,
do you mean by right now?
like in
What do you mean? I
2023.
just listed out things to you that the government is interfering in capitalism. You're saying right now.
But now I feel like you're not listening to me because I said it's not necessary. But of course you have it because we all agree that the government has overstepped the bounds in incremental steps across the way. So
So,
you want
so
me? So you're asking for me to prove a negative. Prove to me that capitalism will work without Joe Biden passing out money to government because he's writing checks because he already did it. How can I unprove that?
you
Right? It
said
doesn't
it's
make
not
sense.
necessary. It's not necessary. Then you have to show me a situation where it works in that in that sphere of
But if I do,
it
you're
not
gonna say,
being
yeah, but
necessary.
that was different because it was 1883 and they
No, no,
had
no. You
X,
can
Y,
go
Z.
ahead and say it. You can say if it's 1883. I'm not see. Just prove your point. It doesn't matter when it happened, right?
Well, I proved my
I
point. I'm
can.
saying that there's nothing about capitalism that says the government has to be an active player. There's nothing about capitalism that says that the government has to
True.
that the government.
In principle, true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they
There's
do it doesn't mean they have to.
but
That's all I'm
but
saying.
there's nothing in communism
But
that
we
says that the
spent the
government has to
last.
kill
Yes,
it.
it does. In communism, it says government. It says
There is
everything is
nothing.
owned by the
Let
government.
me
What
make
do you
my
mean it
point.
doesn't say?
There
It
is
says
nothing in
everything.
communism that says you have to
Everything
kill
is
100
government.
million people.
In a lot of
There
municipalities,
is
they
nothing in
you need a license
communism
to
that
sell.
says you have to
A
be a
kid needs a
dictator.
license. Stop. Okay. You wanted to stop because you wanted an example. I'm gonna give you an example. In a lot of cities, an 8-year-old needs a license to sell lemonade at a lemonade stand, right?
Mm, yep.
But they did not used to be. They did not used to need one. So somebody bought a cup of lemonade one day and had a stomach ache, and some bureaucrat came in and said, "We need to regulate this." But it was working before. So your argument then is we need the government. Capitalism wouldn't work. A lemonade stand wouldn't work without the government regulating the license because now they ask for a license, even though for hundreds of years they didn't ask for a license. Education. We have a Department of Education, right? That's government, right? But it was founded in the 70s. So were American kids not going to school in 1960?
Mm.
In 1930, were they not going to school? Because your argument is because they do it now, that means it has to be done. So of course I can't argue it against it because you're arguing.
Let me give my counter to this, right? I think government role in capitalism is what has tamed capitalism. If not, it would have spiraled into a monster, an unrecognizable monster. One, capitalism tends to monopolies. Capitalism tends to, busts and boom cycles. Capitalism tends to, so many negative things. Let's talk monopoly, for
Who
example.
said those things were negative? So
Monopolies are not negative.
bust and boom is negative?
Monopolies are not negative. Bust and booms, of course, they are. People lose money during recessions. What are you saying is not
what do they
negative?
do on the other side of it though? Do they gain money?
Is everyone who loses money, does everyone who loses money during the recession get their money back
Does everyone
during
lose money?
of course everyone doesn't lose money, but the people that lose money, are they going to get their money back? Is it a good thing for people to lose money? People
I didn't
die
say it was a
during
good thing to
during
lose money,
recession.
but I mean,
Yeah, so it's a bad thing actually. It's a very unstable system.
yes.
That's
Well,
why it's even the government's intervention that's making it
but if
even
the
seem sane.
government were running it, it'd be better. It wouldn't
No,
be
no,
unstable.
no,
No
no,
government has
no,
ever been
no,
unstable.
no. I'm
What have these?
saying
Okay, you singing the praises of these socialist countries. There's
no.
other
You're not
aspects of
getting
it
my
too.
point, Charles.
What have they created? Since they can create outside of that, so what? I mean, what is the innovation that comes from that? I
What
mean, they
have they not
maintain.
created? What
I'm
have
sorry.
they not created? The
Huh?
Soviets, see, the Soviets had a much more advanced nuclear arms program and
Okay,
even
who
a
else?
space
Go. Keep,
program. Let me finish. Even a much more advanced
go
space
on. What else you
program
got?
than the US. So what are you? It the Soviets in under 70 years, the US had the US had about 150 years ahead of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was able to industrialize in less than 70 years to become the second biggest economy before its dissolution in the 90s. So what are you talking about that there's no innovation in socialism? It's not true. There is innovation. The only difference is who gets to control the method or the means of production. You haven't been to other socialist countries to find out that there is no innovations there. It's not possible for there not to be innovations when you have people. The innovations may be at different pace, might be at different rates, but there is definitely going to be innovation.
You're crafty today. I didn't say that they had no innovation. I asked you. It was asked you what have they created. That's. It sounds like the
What's the
same
difference
question.
between
It's not the same
innovation and
question.
creation?
Yes, I mean
What's the
initiating.
what's the difference between creation and innovation?
I mean, what I didn't hear what you say.
What's the difference between innovation and creation?
Well, the creation would be, um, like allowing what like the individuals to be able to, you know, like I said, create, not innovate. So innovate, they're similar, but innovation. When I'm thinking innovation, you're talking about like advancing the community in the city, right? Like so,
No.
improving subway systems, improving highways, that kind of
I
deal.
mean
No, that's not.
technology. I mean technology itself. I mean bringing out good technology. That's those two things are it's a
Like what?
distinction
Give
without
me
a
the new
difference.
tech. Give me the Libyan new technology.
I didn't get that.
I said, give me the new technology from Libya.
I can't give you that. Of course, I don't have that information. I don't live in a socialist country. I've not studied socialist countries' innovation so much, but I do know
Clearly,
that
you think
they're
they're superior, so I want to know why they're superior.
good lord. That's a straw man. I never said they were superior. I see. I'm making very specific claims, right? So my first claim is that capitalism should not claim a superiorly moral position over communism because
Who says
many of the problems
it can't have it can't be superior, morally superior, because it's not a moral economic system. It's an economic
so
system.
so so when
It's
you say
agnostic. It's an
when you say
economic system.
when you
What
say
does morals have to do with capitalism?
good, of course it has nothing to do with any
All right.
economic
So
system,
who's
but when
claiming
you
that?
say, let me finish, when you
Okay.
say these people, this system is bad because it has killed 100 million people, you are making a moral claim.
Well, I'm
You
not
are
commenting on,
effectively making a moral claim.
but you're talking to me, and I didn't comment on the
Yeah,
economic system
yeah.
killing
I'm
people.
just talking about in general the claims, like people like Jordan Peterson always like to make. Right, communism is bad because there's killing is 100 million people
Oh, I
not
got it.
is
This is the one
really
time I
dead,
will
not
give you
enough to.
what you might call a straw man. Um, uh, because you'll probably say this is made up and it doesn't happen. Do people flee capitalist countries?
Yeah, they do.
Uh, in the same numbers that they flee communist countries?
See, are you looking for equity? You want the numbers to be exactly the same and say, oh, of course the numbers are
Not the
going to be
exact same
varied.
number,
The
but in
numbers are going to be
ratio.
varied. Do you
Ratio.
know why? Do you want to know why?
You're going to say
Do you
government.
want do you want to
Government.
know why?
Because of the
Because
U.S.
no,
Because of the U.S. Because the
because
U.S. is evil, and they
no.
went into these countries and they forced them out.
Do
Go
you
ahead,
know how
why?
many times the US has intervened in Latin American countries? In the
So,
politics of Latin
so people
American
only
countries.
leave
Do
Latin
you
America.
know do you know
So
how
people
many
only leave
times
Latin America. That's the only
people
place
don't
people leave.
you're not letting me
So what? So
finish.
they, wait. So they leave these countries because of the U.S.
Oh, good Lord. No,
Right. So people only
they're
wait.
not
Stop. So
leaving
people
these
who flee.
countries.
Wait. Stop. Stop. So people who flee their countries only flee because of U.S. intervention, or that's the primary reason. Is that what you're saying?
You're not
Because if that's
listening.
not the reason,
Listen
don't
to
use it
me.
as an example. And if it is the
Listen to
reason,
me.
I need you to explain. So is
Listen,
that why they
listen
leave?
to me. Now, people live for a variety of reasons. People live for economic reasons. People live
But
for
you said the
safety
economy
reasons.
was great, so that's
Let
not
me
true. So why do they leave?
finish, Charles. Let me
But why would they
finish.
leave for
Right.
economic reasons? It's great.
Let me explain. Right.
The
Let me
U.S. They left
explain.
because of the U.S.
Let's take the Latin American countries as an example, right? I'm saying people are living for safety reasons, people are living for economic reasons. America has intervened more than 100 times in the economies and in the politics of those countries. America has propped up dictators that are oppressive to their people. What happens when you have an oppressive regime? People leave because there's oppression. What happens when a country is under economic sanctions? Like Cuba has been under economic sanctions since the 60s. Of course, things are going to be hard. People are going to leave. They want to have economic success. These things are not, they don't happen in a vacuum, right? You can't just say, people are leaving for these reasons. Why are those conditions there in the first place?
Because of the
You've got to ask
U.S.
yourself,
They're
what
there
are the
because of the
roots?
U.S.
Partly because of the US, not
Not
solely
fully
because
because
of
of
the
the
US, but
U.S.
partly
So,
because of
so
the
those
US.
dictators were benevolent in kind, and they didn't exist until the U.S. propped them up.
I,
So
I, I
prior to
gave
the
you I
U.S.
gave I gave
propping
you a
them
case.
up, what were
I
the
gave you
conditions? What were the
I gave
conditions
you the
prior
case
to the
of
prop up?
Guatemala. I gave you the case of
What were the
Guatemala.
conditions prior
Wait,
to that?
let me explain.
Because
I gave
what
you
you're
the case.
doing is you're taking these
Oh, good
insane
Lord,
snapshots,
Charles,
which is
you're not
what.
letting me
So you're
talk.
listen, wait. So you're selectively picking which countries you want to
I
use.
am
So if I
not.
ask you why they're
I'm giving
leaving, if I ask you
examples.
why
You
they're
don't expect
drowning
me.
in,
No,
in,
you
the,
don't
in the
expect me to
waters on
name
their
all
way to
countries in
Greece,
the world.
you'll
I'm
say
giving
Latin
examples.
America. If I say what happened in Cuba, you say because of the sanctions and embargo against them, not because of
Well,
the
it's
but
true.
not because of the treatment. So when people come here from all these countries and talk about how they were treated there, your argument is they were treated that way because of the U.S. So all the
This
dictators of
this is the
Africa
this is the thing
treated people
about
that way
people in
because
the
the U.S.
US,
propped them
right?
up. Is that what your
See,
argument
this
is?
see, this is the thing about the US, right? I think the
Because
US
see,
is
that's the
so
thing. That is my
it's
problem with
so
you because you're
focused
harping
on
on the U.S.
itself.
You say nothing can happen in a vacuum, but you act like but for the U.S., all of these places would be Shangri-La. And then you're
So
gonna say that's not
Charles,
what you're saying. And then I say,
that's
give
a
me an
straw
example.
man.
And the first
That's
example
a
you give me
straw.
is
That's a
America.
straw man.
It's
That's
evil
a straw
America.
man.
It's America,
You're
America,
not
America.
getting my
So
point.
why don't you tell me what happened absent of America? So
Oh,
what was
good
happening?
Lord.
So I'm going to give you your argument. So the U.S. came into country you get to pick, and everything was bad when the evil U.S. came. But you won't tell me what happened. What was happening in the country before the U.S. got there?
So
Was
let
it
me tell you
benevolent?
what let
Was
me tell
everything
you what
great?
let me tell
Was
you
it,
what was happening in those countries, right?
which
Those
country are you
countries.
picking this time?
So let me pick Iran. I can pick Iran if you want, right? Iran was the jewel of the Middle East. Iran was a thriving democracy. Iran was a westernized country in the Middle East until the US sponsored a coup in Iran, right? And from that coup, there was a counter revolution, which led to the Iranian government that we currently have. So the interventionist policies of the US took Iran decades backwards. So
Okay.
if the US had not intervened in Iran, Iran would probably be a very, very westernized, prosperous country in the Middle East today. So
They
what
would
are
be
we talking about?
westernized. Interesting.
Let's
But,
go to Libya, like the country I gave you an example of earlier, right?
mhm.
The Libya, I was giving you certain statistics before Gaddafi came into power in Libya. Literacy rate was in around maybe 20 something. By the time Gaddafi was dying, literacy rates was around 80 something percent. There was no homelessness in Libya. There was free healthcare. There were
You
less
said that.
people living under the poverty line in Libya than in the Netherlands. These are positive indicators, right? And then the US goes in there and bombs the shit out of Libya, and Libya is a mess today. There is
Mhm.
the country is fragmented. There is not. What are we talking about?
So Iran and Libya were perfect?
Oh, good Lord, this is a straw man. Did I say
No, no,
perfect? Is the
no.
US
Stop,
perfect?
stop. It's not a
Is the
straw man.
US
I
perfect?
asked you that because you have nothing negative to say about it.
I'm
So
making a
nothing. So
point,
what?
but I was not going to cover everything. Of course, they're not perfect. Is the US perfect
No, no,
itself? Is
no.
there a
You don't
perfect
not
nation?
covering everything. You have nothing negative to say.
Good Lord.
It's selective. So I asked you what were the
Charles,
conditions there, and you again. I said you act
I
like it
gave,
was Shangri La, and
I
you say no,
no,
I don't, and then you paint me Shangri La.
no, I gave you the conditions that were good that became bad after US intervention. Of course, the country, there will be problems with the country.
Like
Libya
what?
was a
Name a
dictator.
problem.
Okay, so Libya was a dictatorship, so you effectively did not have, democratic
Libya was a
participation.
what?
That's a negative. It was a dictatorship under
It was a
Gaddafi. So,
dictatorship.
yeah,
So why does this keep doing that? But you said that it was. I'm confused. So how could it be a dictatorship but everything was great? So what is it? What do you
that's
mean by
where you
dictatorship? What does that
that's
mean?
where you think that's where you think that democracy is the only
What do you
form of
mean by
government that can
dictatorship
keep
then?
people safe.
No, what tell me what the dictatorship. What do you mean by dictatorship then?
Where political power was concentrated in the hands of one person or a few individuals. That's a
Right.
dictatorship, right? There were no political
Okay,
parties. There
so
were
it
no
was in the
You
hands of
couldn't
one
vote for
person,
anything.
but he was right. So it was in the hands of one person. So it was a one
Mhm.
person rule, but he was a benevolent dictator, so his rule was good, and everybody was treated well.
Uh-huh. Most people were
Nobody
treated well. I
was
didn't say I'm not
imprisoned for
saying everybody was
disagreeing
treated
with
well.
them.
Most people were treated well. Well, you're acting like this is strange. For
Most
most of
people
the
were
world,
treated well.
no. For most of human history, people were ruled by kings. They just installed another king in England yesterday. That's the way. There were good kings, there were bad kings. That's the way people used to live before the advent of whatever forms of government you're having now. So are you going to say that during the reign of all kings that people were living
No,
terribly, all kings were bad?
all the kings were great.
Charles, you know that's a straw man.
Monarchies are fantastic.
You know that's not the point. That's not the point I'm trying to make. I don't know. It's like you're deliberately obfuscating my point. My point is not to say that these countries were great. I'm saying
Your
that
point is
prior to
Frankenstein. Your
US
point is to
intervention,
put pieces from every place
these were the
that
things
benefits
that were
your
going
point, put
great
them
for these
together
countries.
and create this wonderful example
Before the
of
US intervention in these countries, these were the things going great for this country, right? After the US
apparently every
intervention,
country.
this was what
Every
happened.
country. Yeah.
This is the thing Americans do, right? And it's not fair. I'm trying to make a point, right? It's not fair. I'm not saying every country, but the US has a history
But
of
every
leaving terrible blueprints all over the all wherever the US has intervened.
that's
It
not
has the
totally
history.
but that's not totally untrue. The problem is that I'm having is your depiction of the places before they got there. But for any strife, they wouldn't be able. They
Charles,
wouldn't be able to get half
did
of the
I say
people
those
to
countries were
join
perfect?
them. What?
Did I say those countries were perfect, Charles? Stop. Give you what? Sorry, my daughter is just. I never said those countries were perfect. I gave you the things that were good in those countries before the US came in and fucked everything up.
You didn't
Of
give me
course, you can't
anything
have a
that was
perfect
bad.
country.
So that implies that it was good.
But
The U.S. touched it, and
you're,
then it became bad.
but this
Your
is so
whole
frustrating.
argument, it was good. The U.S. touched it, it became bad, and you're trying to pretend that that's not the argument. That is
On the
literally
whole,
the
it was
argument.
good. On the whole,
Yes,
it
you
was
just
good.
that's
Yes, on the whole,
fine.
it was
That's
good.
fine that that's your argument. But then when I
See,
repeat it to you to clarify, you say that's not my argument. That
see,
is
on
literally
the
your
whole,
argument.
on the whole, in comparison to what you have after US interventionism, it
No,
was
I want to
good.
know if it was good. Not as good to compare to what it could be bad and then worse.
You're trying to push me into
I'm just
a
asking. I'm not
position.
trying to push you anything. I'm
No,
asking,
you
and your
are, because
answers
I'm
don't seem
clarifying now, and you're
to
saying
be
no.
very clear. But okay, got you.
Charles,
So not only
listen,
capitalism is bad, but then the U.S. is bad. Everyone else is good. Monarchies are good. Dictatorships are good, and socialism's good. Got you. We're all on the same page now.
Charles.
We're good. Okay, what else you got?
I didn't expect you to be this much of a straw man, but it's fine. It's fine. I never said that all those things are good, and I am saying
I
that.
literally just repeated back what you said. But okay, you never said it. You are recording this, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay,
It's live.
you keep
There are
saying you
people.
never said, but you literally said. But okay.
When did I say communism is good, or monarchies are good? I was making a point. right? You were saying dictatorships, that it was as if you were saying nothing good can come out of dictatorships. But I'm telling you that for most of human history, most people lived under dictatorships,
Yeah,
and there
but
were
it didn't
good
mean it
kings
was
and there were
good.
bad kings. There were good kings and there were
But now
bad
your
kings. What are you
argument
talking
for
about?
dictatorship is like, we used to have it. Well, we used to have slavery. Slavery must be good because for most of human history, there was slavery, so it must be good.
Oh, good Lord.
That's not a straw man. That's sarcasm. You need to learn the difference.
All right. So what do we talk about now? I
I
think
have no idea.
uh
This is your show, the other Charles.
let's do some race stuff, right? Um
Let's
I'm
do
sure
some
you've
what?
seen some
Oh,
race stuff. What are your thoughts on the response to the death slash killing of Jordan Neely? What
I don't
are
know. They're
your
stupid.
thoughts? Stupid from what side?
I don't
what
know.
what
Just any
what exactly do
response.
you find
I
stupid?
would prefer no response. Why do they even
Mm,
care?
mm.
Like I responded to your tweet. You're like, this person does. You probably don't even care. You saying they don't care, but you don't care either. I don't.
So
I know
that's
it was a
it.
short response, but I meant it. I don't care. I think it's stupid that people care so much. And it
So
sounds mean, but what am I supposed to care about every crime? So which crimes am I not supposed to care about? Am I supposed to just stop my life and curl in a ball and rot every time something bad happens? Would I even
so
get out
so
of bed if I did that?
I think it's the principle that you should care about, not
What's the
specifically
principle? What is the principle
the
that I should care
the
about?
principle that for the fact that someone has a prior how someone has prior convictions does not mean that when they are killed in such
Who
a
said
manner
that?
that
Who
it's
said that they
okay.
mean that means
Oh,
that
there are a lot
no?
of people.
I've seen
There are a
no
lot
tweets
of
that
people.
says because he
There
had a
are.
prior arrest, he should be killed. Not
Do
one.
you do you follow Jake
What
Shields?
I see is people responding saying they said that. I have
Do
not.
you
I'm not
do
saying
you
it's
follow
Twitter's
Jake
big. I
Shields?
can't see
Do
every
you
tweet.
follow the guy
I've
called
never
Jake
seen
Shields?
anybody tweet. Well, since he went to jail, he should have been killed.
Oh, good Lord.
If you can
You're
forward
on
one of those
Twitter.
tweets to me, I'd
You're on
love to
Twitter.
see
You
it.
should know that. There are
If you
many people who have said.
if
There
you
are many
well,
people who
could you
have said
forward me
that.
one?
There are many people who
Well,
have said
then
that
it should be
he
easy to
had it
find me one.
coming.
Then it should be easy to
There,
find
there,
me one.
I will show you tweets. There are people who
Thank
have
you.
literally said that.
Do that, and
Iron
then
Miles.
I will
Let me
publicly
give you an
reply to it
example.
and
Let me
say
give you an
this is wrong.
example. Let me give you
But
an
that's not
example.
what the
Iron.
but
Do
see, you're
you
doing the
you know
same thing
this?
you did with the other
Oh, good
conversation.
Lord.
You're saying
Oh,
that because some Johnny tweeted something about that because how did it start? It started with do you care? I don't. What's your reaction? I don't care. You're go to the tape. You say you're taping this because you think I'm making this stuff up. This is fascinating to me. This is the weirdest interview I've ever done. I mean, I don't know what you've been doing today. So you say, what are your thoughts? I say, I don't care. You say, well, you should care about the principle. I say, what is the principle? The principle is just because somebody has arrest, they shouldn't get killed. I didn't say who says that. Lots of people are saying that. Well, then that makes no sense. But I have personally haven't seen people say that. Oh, lots of
well,
people are saying that. What do you
I
mean
was
you
I was
haven't
about
seen it?
I was
All I
giving you an
said is that
example.
I haven't seen it.
But I'm giving you an example. For the fact that you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist,
Right. And if
right?
they
You
said that,
can't
that's
know
stupid.
everything.
But I
You
also
can't know
believe my first
everything.
response was like, what do you think the responses are? They are stupid. The responses are stupid, which means that
Yeah,
response is stupid.
and yeah,
That's what I think of that response. I think it's stupid. And I also do not care.
I'm
So
not
am I
asking you
not
to
clear
care.
enough now?
I'm not asking you to care, right?
Oh, good.
I am
Good,
saying
because I
I
don't.
am saying I'm saying you should care at least on principle,
Nah.
right?
Well, yeah, but if you're saying the principle is should he be killed, that's a dumb principle. And I don't think many people are making it. You claim they are. And I say if they
So
are, they're wrong.
let me give you an example, right? So
Okay.
I don't know if you follow this weird guy that looks like an aborted Chinese fetus, Iron Miles on Twitter, and
What's his name?
he post Iron Miles, IANMILES, and I think there's a third name there. Maybe I'll find it and
Oh,
send it to you.
uh-huh.
So
I know who he is, but I don't follow.
yeah, good. So he did a poll today, right? He asked, "What do you think about the death of Jordan Neely? A, unfortunate, or he didn't deserve it. B, he had it coming. Do you know
He
how
had
many
it
people
coming.
he had
He
it
had
coming?
it coming. Oh, so it's a song from
68%,
Chicago. Carry on.
68% of respondents responded that he had it coming.
That's Twitter.
What
People are stupid.
what
That's Twitter.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think
Yeah.
my point is
It's Twitter.
my point
But
is
Twitter's
made.
not the real world, Charles.
But your first claim was that no one was saying it. Now Twitter is not the real world. fine, I accept. Twitter
No,
is not the real
no.
world.
My first response was that it was stupid. And you ignored that, and you tried to make me.
Okay.
You
So
say you have to care.
your
You because
second
you love
response,
dictatorships, decided that I must care, but I don't.
Charles,
So
Charles.
again, this is recorded. People, go back and look. He asked me what I thought, and I said
Okay,
about the
so
responses, and I
I'm sorry.
said,
That was
and I
your first
quote,
response.
"They're stupid."
One of your response was that
That was later after you like, please
yeah,
care.
of course, but that was the response you made. Now that there were
Yeah,
no
they're
one
just
was
stupid.
saying that. You said
Right?
no
I
one was
hadn't
saying
seen
it. That
anybody
was one
tweet
response.
that. You asked me
Good,
about,
and I showed you.
but
And now
Joe,
that I shown you, you said, "Well, it's
no,
just
you
Twitter.
didn't
Twitter is
show
not the
me.
real world."
First of all, you didn't
I
show
gave you
me.
an
You told
example.
me what somebody said, and I don't follow them, so I didn't see the tweet.
Yeah, I'm going to send.
So
I'll
it
screenshot
still
it and
goes
send
back
it
to
to you
what I
later.
said that I haven't seen
I
anybody
will
tweet it.
screenshot it and send it to you later,
You
Charles.
what?
I'll
You'll send it to
screenshot
me
it and
later?
send it to
Oh,
you.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't care, but okay, you send it to me. So he tweeted that. So okay, so those people are stupid. What do you want me to do about it? Oh, you want to
Well,
ask if he had it coming? No, he did not have it coming. I'm on record saying he did not have it coming.
it didn't. Okay,
Still don't care.
okay. I think we're agreed on. So at least in principle, you agree that he did not have it. He didn't have it coming, right? That's
Hey, he might
that's
have
the
had
principle.
he might have had the chokehold coming, but he didn't have the death coming. I don't have a problem with somebody grabbing him if I wasn't there, but if he was being violent and aggressive toward people, I don't have a problem with anybody grabbing him.
But
And even if the guy didn't intend to kill him, oh well, it happened. You're in trouble. I think he should do some jail time, right? It's no different than if you accidentally hit somebody with your car. You didn't do it on purpose, but you don't get to go home, right? Sorry, I know that wasn't intent. If you had hit him and he fell down and got up and be like, "My bad," then you wouldn't go to jail. But since he died, he go to jail. That's just the way it is. But
exactly.
but that's not what I see on Twitter. What I see is he was lynched, which is funny. You didn't ask about that first, but he was lynched. Was not.
Well, I didn't take any
murder.
position. I asked you what your responses were.
It was not murder. He was lynched. That's foolish. It only happened because he's black. Stupid. Showing me old videos of him doing the moonwalk.
But the thing is, I don't disagree with any of the things you just said.
Unless he was doing the moonwalk at the time, means nothing to me. But carry on. What's your question?
Charles.
Yes.
I don't disagree with any of the things you just said. I mean, when I first
why
saw
are you being so confrontational then?
No, I'm not. Oh, is this confrontational? I'm sorry if I'm coming across as confrontational. When I first saw Mark Lamont Hill comments about him being lynched, I retweeted it and said, "This is stupid. This is dumb." Of course, it wasn't lynched. Of course, that wasn't.
So how is that different? So you say that's stupid and that's fine. I saying he had it coming is stupid. You're like, oh God, it's stupid. Well, oh my God, how can you say that, Joe? You need to care. I literally said the same thing you said.
No. You're mixing it up. So when you said it's stupid, I said fine, right? So my follow up was that you should care at least in principle that people should not just be killed because of their priors. That was where we went. That was where we were taking the conversation to.
He wasn't killed because of his priors. You think the guy, even if the guy's guilty, the guy who choked him, you think the guy who choked him knew his priors?
Of course, he didn't know. That's my
right.
point.
So
exactly.
obviously, he wasn't killed because of his priors.
Some people are using that as a
those aren't the people who choked him. He was, even if they think it's okay, he was not killed because of that. We agree, he was not killed because of his priors.
Of course,
was he killed because he was black?
Of his priors. No, he wasn't.
All right, then. So why? Okay. So here's the question that a lot of people you disagree with ask, and you get mad at them. So now I'm going to channel them. So what is wrong with the people who say, why care about this murder and not others?
There's nothing wrong with them, but I have
a
right to
when
respond.
People do that.
Because
you're like, you don't care either.
Because it's stupid.
It's stupid to say I shouldn't care more about this murder than another murder. Why is that stupid?
Because they are making a comparison that's unnecessary.
I didn't compare anything. I didn't make a comparison.
I wasn't talking about.
I said no, but listen to what
I'm talking about the people.
I'm saying, why should I care about this more than others? And you said that's stupid. Why is it stupid? I didn't compare it to another one. I'm asking why should I care about this one and not others?
So I thought you were talking about the other people who were making such. So if you don't want to care about it, it's fine. I mean,
I'm not saying I don't want to care. I'm asking. I'm talking about if I tweeted, why are so many people upset about this and not all of the many random murders that happen all the time. What is wrong with
Mm.
saying that?
What is wrong with saying that?
Yes.
Technically, there's nothing wrong with saying that.
But you attack people for saying it.
Oh, the people I attacked for saying it were people who were making unnecessary comparisons.
But
Okay, so let
that
me give an
you'll
example.
be spending your
Let
whole life
let me let me give
attacking
an
everybody because
example.
they're all making unnecessary comparisons. So wait, oh, let me. Did you?
Well, it's my life. I can decide to use my time to,
All right, then.
attack everyone who
Okay,
is
knock
making
yourself out.
unnecessary comparisons.
Okay.
So let me give an example. Barrington Martin, who I
Uh-huh.
like to call Barrington the Uncocked, right? He made a post, he made a tweet. He said that if kneeling was killed by a black person, would anyone care? Would it make any news? And I'm like, what really is the point of that? What is the
I'll tell
point
you what the
of
point
that
of it is.
comparison?
If I'm not going to knock it because I don't know if it's worded that way, but if it were worded the way you said it, it was slightly off. Because if he said if he was killed by a black person, would it be in the news? That's unfair because of course it would be. It's a subway thing, especially in local news in New York. What he's really asking, and a lot of these people, a lot of times I agree with people in the way they frame it is wrong. So I don't know. I'm not going to say that because I didn't see the actual tweet.
So
Oh, I'm
let me
not
look
looking
for
at
the
it now. I
tweet.
think I remember
And
it, but I don't know how he said it. But if his question was, I can tell you the point. If he's asking if he were killed by a black person, would there be people jumping down in the subway line, blocking the trains and swinging at cops? The answer is no, and that's a legitimate question. And because you don't think so, doesn't make it not legitimate.
no. So
Because he's
what you
calling
said,
out the fact
of
that
course.
they're
See,
being phony.
so the thing is, I don't actually disagree, right? I don't disagree with what you just said. That,
Oh
of course,
God!
the
Yeah,
responses
my
are going to
head
be
hurts.
different, but I still think it's unnecessary,
Let me ask you a
right?
question. What is your definition of a troll on Twitter? Because I don't think I'm savvy enough to understand what that means. Because I don't think I am. Somebody once called me that, and I'm like, I have a different definition. So maybe my definition is skewed. What do you think a troll is on Twitter?
I know what it is. I can't define it. That's
See, well, tell me if you think I'm right. What I think it is I think it's someone who makes posts, examples, analogies, stories, or whatever they
hmm,
say, in order to get people riled up.
okay. I'll go with that definition.
I don't know if it is or not, but if that's the definition, some things seem like that and they aren't. So a troll to me would be somebody who, for instance, is a I'm trying to get an example. Somebody who um, takes a very extreme position on something just to get people to respond, right?
Mm,
I say that because in the example you gave, I don't think that's what he was doing, right? If he's
mm,
saying you saying it's unnecessary, I'm in New York. You aren't.
mm,
Barrington's not. I'm in New York.
mm.
So when I can't get on the train because my line is blocked because 40 fools are standing on the train because some guy got killed, and I'm in there and I'm seeing other crimes happen. I see people get pushed on the train track and get killed. You know what my post? Let me tell you what. Let's be real. Let me tell you what you think because you might not have seen it. I'm gonna tell you what I posted. I want to know what you think. I saw when I first saw the people the first day. They weren't on the track. They were just out there. And the news. This was local news. It wasn't like a Twitter person. This was like NBC News saying
Mm.
at the site of the Broadway Lafayette station where there's a protest over the death of such and such. And my post was, why is it a protest and not a vigil?
Yeah, I saw that
Because
post. I saw it.
generally, I'm in New York. Generally, if a 13-year-old gets shot outside of school and he's a straight A student and he got shot just walking home, got caught in the crossfire, which is extremely sad, I would
Mm,
argue more so than this situation. There's
hmm.
a vigil. People light candles. People go out there. People lay flowers. People show their
Yep.
respect. Jordan got killed, right? Much of the same
Hmm.
way, just as bad. And if you want to go out there and say this is bad and I want something to happen, you put flowers down as a visual, that's fine. But this was a
Hmm.
protest. So my tweet was, why is it a protest, not a visual? Was that wrong?
No, absolutely not.
So when I see something like the tweet you're talking about from Barrington, I don't have a problem with it because I think it's right in the sense that now I get you when you mess with people when they complain about the race thing, but then they talk about the black on black, or then they bring in the race because then you're doing the same thing you complained about. That's different. But in
Exactly.
this particular case, I think it's totally fair to say, I didn't have to, I was busy before we got on. I was going to look it up because just in case we talked about something else, I didn't know we would. Because I would be interested in looking at. So this is something I wouldn't tweet because I don't tweet this stuff because this is why I talk about tweeting and deleting because it's not my niche. It's not what I do. It's not my brand. So I just stay consistent. I don't say anything. But if you want to get real about what really goes on in Charles's head, give you a sample because people always ask me, what do you type that I delete? I would virtually, mentally tweet something like this and not tweet. I would look up the number of people shot in AOC's congressional district last week. And I would venture to say it's a big district. It covers, 500,000 people. I would say there's probably 15 people shot, 2 killed, right? Just making that number up, people. But what I would say is AOC is saber rattling and going on and constantly tweeting about this murder. And she's a representative. So not Barrington, not you, not me. She's an elected official. And 22 people got shot in her district. She said nothing about it. 2 of them were killed. One of them was, in theory, young. Let's say it was a high school student at college. If she said nothing about that, I think it's totally fair to call her out on that.
Oh, yeah, of course. Totally
but I
fair.
Because I don't tweet like that.
Yep.
But when I see a tweet like that from Barrington, so let me just say something I usually don't say. You've been making me mad out there. I'm not going to say it. Nope, I'm not going to do it. You don't get this free, because I'm not going to do it. I was going to tell you something. Okay, I'll frame it this way. I don't know. What do you think about the way I approach topics on Twitter?
Well, I think the way you approach topics on Twitter is, I will link it to the first conversation we had where you said, okay, if you are saying something, then you ask yourself, you ask the question, then what, right? If you're saying, oh, the Democrats are doing this or Republicans are doing this, then what? What's your solution, right? What is your proposal, right? So that's the way I see the way you come at things, right? So you don't really put your thoughts out there because at times you're like, oh, these guys are not providing any solution. They're just complaining about the same things or you're just bitching about the same things. So that's the way I see the way you approach things on Twitter.
Yeah. Okay, fine. You earn it back. So that is totally true. And that's my point. And but because of that, where I differ from many people on Twitter who are, and it's weird because you get a lot of conservatives who don't like these other conservatives because they hurt their brand, right? You get a lot of liberals who don't like these liberals, whatever. You get a lot of people who are extreme and they're like, we should ban whatever. I like free speech anyway. But my take is I need them all. Because the reason I can delete all these tweets and not get into Twitter wars with people is because other people are doing it for me. So I love AOC and Jordan Peterson and Matt Walsh and all them. Love it. But for them, so they can go throw the bomb and I can come clean up. Right? So without them, then I may delete a few fewer tweets that I tweet. So I like the fact that I don't follow many of them. You don't have to. They got millions of followers. People retweet everything they say to call them stupid. And then I look at that and I say, well, were they right or were they wrong? And then I'll just say, well, I get why you're upset, but what do you think? Did you consider this? And then I can just, back away and maintain my very moderate, nuance, let's get something out of it. So Matt Walsh said something racist. Maybe it's racist, but can we get something out of it? Right? So that's what I want to do. But you can't do it without it. If Ebony K. Williams isn't being a complete moron, we can't point out the nuances about what she said. And luckily for us, she keeps doing it. She keeps trying to clean it up by making it worse. It's so much fun.
Yeah. So this is, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head on what I'm trying to do, right? It's not so much what Barrington is tweeting. It's not so much what Barrington is tweeting, right? It's the racial comparisons that really gets me, right? So most of the time when I respond to those tweets, maybe there are a couple of elements on those tweets. What I am really responding to is the racial component of it, is the racial comparisons. Because if conservatives have this mantra of individualism, right, then I think you should actually be, speaking more on the individual aspects of things, right? Why are you bringing in a group saying, oh, well, if it was a black man that killed him, would people care? Would there be protests, right? You can make your point without invoking race. That's really my
But
point
see, here's the
most
other
of the
problem
time.
with that, and I applaud that, and I agree with that. Back to the capitalism thing, I agree with that in a vacuum. But the reason I need the extremists on both sides, and the reason I need the people, who will come out there in full um, fight mode, is because we're not in a vacuum, and somebody needs to fight on the battleground that the winners are laying, right? So if they're building the layers of everything based on race, you can't then not talk about race at all, right? You can't then. So if everything, like, how can you combat Mark Lamont Hill and AOC when it's dripping with race without mentioning race? So you need somebody to say, okay, I don't really, profess that all the problems are due to race, but if we're going to play the race game, then what would happen then, right? So someone needs to say that, or otherwise, AOC, I mean, no, better than AOC, another elected official, Ayanna Pressley gets to say he was lynched. I mean, Mark Lamont Hill said it, but he's not an elected official. So she gets to say he was lynched, right? An elected official gets to call it all about race, and then there's nobody there to push back. If you do it from an individual standpoint, you can say something nice and meaningful and right, like, I'm sorry that this guy is dead, but shouldn't we be focused more on the individual and the loss of life than focusing on race? That is a very intelligent statement that will get lost on Twitter. So you would tweet that and get 20 likes to her 2 million responses. But if you tweet something like he tweets, right, now you're fighting fire with fire. That's all. I'm not saying
So
it's right,
it's
but
about the
somebody else,
tweets and the likes.
everybody can't be,
Is this about the tweets and the likes? Is that what it boils down to? Which of these
but no,
statements
but
gets
see,
more
but
engagement?
you're looking at it different. You're looking at it by likes by somebody, because which is true. I don't mean it in this sense. Likes could mean two things. Likes could mean I'm trying to tweet stuff, like I said, like a troll, to get people to pay attention to me, right? To get fame, to get more followers. That's one thing. And I can see you being against that. But likes are also people who see it, right? So do you want people to see it? Do you want, because if people retweet it, other people see it? So do you want to
But
call
why do you
out
care if people
Johnny's
see it? What does
hypocrisy
it going to
and have a
what?
lot,
Why do you
of people
care
see
if?
it?
Why do you care if people see it? What's it going to change anyway? After all, Twitter is not the real world. So
Now you're being naive. What's the point of Twitter then? Why don't we all
yeah.
just
So
shut down our Twitter accounts?
what's the point of
Okay.
it?
Okay, then let's do that. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said before, you mocked me, but it's not the real world. I talk to people in the real world, and they don't talk like any of you on Twitter. It's not the real world. It's not. It's not.
Yeah. It's not. It really isn't.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, it's a way to get your message out. It's really the only reason I'm on it. So we can't be on it to get the message out and then pretend we don't want to get the message out. I mean, come on, let's not be silly. I mean, I don't have a big name. I mean, it'd be different if you were, like you Tucker Carlson and you were the anchor on that show. So even if you're not on Twitter, people can still see you because you're on TV, right? But I mean, a lot of people meet me. I get like, I got a podcast. I get a lot of my guests by that. Just like, hey, I wanted this person to come on. Anybody know their phone number or email? No, but their DMs are open. Gonna come on the show, right?
Mm.
That's how we met the first. That's how I came on your show the first time. So it's good for that. It's a tool, is what it is. But it's not real life. It's not real, and then especially it's only a fraction of the world on it, and other people who are on it, a large percentage of them are only doing it for some other reason. I'm not knocking them, but they're doing it to sell a book, to promote a show, whatever. That's fine. That's a good thing. That's why I do it.
True.
But if that's why they're doing it, it's not the real world. Like, I don't talk on Twitter the way I really talk.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't, and I'm, a little more even keeled than most people. So most people, they're not friending people that don't agree with them, but in real life, they have friends that don't agree with them. And then they all talk in extremes. A large percentage of them, not all, but many people talking in extremes. That's not the real world. You're a conservative. You don't walk into a room in the real world and be like, hey, how many of you crazy leftist fools are in here? Right? If you're a liberal, you don't walk in the room and say, who voted for Trump? You don't do that. But you'll do it on Twitter, right? So, that's why,
Yeah. So
I mean, people frustrate me sometimes, but I just ignore it. And I just like, no, I'm not going
yeah.
to respond to
So
that.
yeah,
So,
of course you have a point, right?
yeah.
And when I engage on Twitter, there are so many things going on. It At times it's not necessarily I'm disagreeing with you. At times I'm just trying to make a philosophical point,
But that's
right?
fine. But the way you do it is hard. You know what you're doing when you type it. You type it like, oh, look, it's the moron again. Right? That's the tone of your tweets. You literally just said you had a name for Barrington, right? So of course,
Yeah,
if I
Barrington the
so you'll
Uncucked.
do it and it'll pop up and I'll just laugh. But when you do it and then I read the tweet you're replying to and it made sense, then I got to call you out. I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? Right? But mine are always short. I don't really do it. It's like you'll say, like I think the one I remembered is somebody said that we can George, what's his game's name? The guy who got choked again, choke boy, what's his name? I forgot his name.
Jordan.
Yeah, Jordan Neely. This, and this because he's black, and you don't care. And then I think it was Barrington. It was like, well, you don't really care about this. And then you replied, you don't care. You asked the question. You was like, but do you care? I would assume that you don't need. I'm believing that you don't care either. Do you care? And I was like, I don't. Let me
Yeah.
volunteer an answer for you. I don't. And I wasn't kidding. I don't care. I'm not as bad
Yeah.
as Shamika. Shamika's work. I'm about to post a clip because it's so funny. So I don't usually have this many free afternoons, but I had one and I was cutting clips of some of the old shows. And we had David Marcus on. And it's funny because, he's the one that everybody went viral because he smoked on TV. And I joke with him because I was like, I get credit for that. I'm the one that told him he should do it more often. He did it on the podcast. So I went to cut a clip of him lighting up a cigarette on the podcast. And as I'm listening, Shamika said something and we were talking about homelessness. And you think I'm bad. Wait till you see this post that I'm going to put. Shamika's crazy. In a good way, but yeah, she said I love her because she said it's like if a white person says what so here we go race, but it's important because it's true. If a white person says the quiet part out loud, we'll be like KKK, get them fired. But Shamika says some crazy stuff and people just laugh. But it's what people think, and she was like, I don't care.
True.
I mean,
That's
somebody's got to be honest in the room.
yeah. I'm not against honesty. You can be as honest as you want to be. I mean, it's
Unless you're
everybody's
Barrington,
prerogative.
apparently.
Yeah.
Or Jordan Peterson. Let me ask you this. So you got a couple of them. Like, you're going to laugh about this, but I literally have no idea who Andrew Tate is. I know him by face now because people post it. But and I know who Jordan Peterson is, of course. But you spend 90% of your time on Twitter. I mean, it could not even be about Jordan Peterson. People could say, well, what do you want for dinner, Charles? You'd be like, why don't we ask the fake psychologist, Jordan Peterson? I'm like, whoa, I'm clutching my pearls. I'm like, what did Jordan Peterson ever do to child? And when I say, this is a good example. From the clips I've seen, I'm sure I can find some stuff I don't like. Right? Because I don't agree with anybody all the time but me. I don't agree with you. I don't agree with Barrington. I don't agree with nobody. Will, I don't agree with anybody. However, I'm going to go as good as it gets. I need him on that wall. I need James Lindsay. I need Chris Rufo. Man, Chris got into it about stuff before. I need Chris Rufo. You know why? Because with the stuff I disagree with that you also disagree with, because of the way he attacked and because of his notoriety, whistleblowers will send him stuff that they won't send me. And even whatever you think about Chris, what's good about him getting the deets is because I don't know if you saw the article I tweeted about me running for CEC. It's kind of like school board in New York. And so I gave some examples as why. And I love it because I like the negative stuff. I like when people attack me, right? And I was expecting that. But what was interesting, I thought the people, I was looking for the challenge so I can have a back and forth. But you couldn't really challenge what I said and say it was good, right? There's a few crazy stuff, but for the most part, nobody said, I don't see what your problem is with that. But what they said, Charles, was I don't believe that. I think you made that stuff up. So I'm using my 7-year-old to win an election to a non-paid, very small local school thing, right? Whatever. But yeah, they say I was making it up. So what I like Rufo is people who are afraid to speak. People think it's bad, but I'm a traditional liberal. I think it's bad, but I don't want to get canceled, but I'll feed some information. We'll feed him stuff. So now he has the receipts. So when you say it doesn't happen, it's like, okay, here's an email directly from the school. Here's a short video taken in a classroom of XYZ. So we need him to get that. Jordan Peterson will reach people that other people wouldn't reach, right? So that's my thing about that. So where people will post stuff that I think is crazy, I also think that they can reach, and it doesn't even have to be Twitter, it can be radio, interviews, whatever, a segment of the population who may not know what's going on that some of us can't reach. So I'm like, do your thing. So what I do is, so here's a good example, and I'll let you talk. Good example. If you go, I mean, nobody's gonna go through that many tweets, but if you went through all of my tweets, probably, I mean, every once in a while we all slip up. I'm a man, but in general, you went through all my tweets, you will never hear me say anything negative about Trump, right? That's probably not that shocking for people. But what's shocking is you'll never hear me say anything positive about Trump, the politician or man. Maybe he was right about that. Maybe I'll go that far. But in general, right? You'll never hear me go, ooh, MAGA. You never see me do it. But you'll also never see me knock Biden. I can think about it. You might get a laugh out of this. The only people I've ever said anything negative about, I really don't think I said anything negative about Nicole Hannah Jones. I literally wrote a book about her, about the 1619 Project. Never said anything bad about her. And I don't believe, I said before on the podcast, I don't believe she's a grifter. Kendi, on the other hand, but anyway, the only people I can recall saying anything, negative about were the current press secretary and Kamala Harris. I
Well,
called them
Kamala
stupid.
Harris, yeah,
I called them stupid. I said
yeah.
that. Shame on me. I don't
Yeah,
usually call names. I called them stupid.
yeah.
I think they're stupid, but I probably shouldn't have tweeted it. But I don't say anything about Biden. My point is, I don't really generally resort in the ad hominem attacks. But I also am focused on culture, so I don't care who wins politically. But I don't mind other people doing it.
So the thing is, okay, so most of the time when you see me on Twitter, I'm usually doing a quote unquote non McDonald bit, right? I don't know if you're familiar with Norm McDonald's comedy. There was during the OJ Simpson trials and all that. I think he was fired from the show, and one of the reasons why he was fired was that literally every show he would come and do something about OJ. His bosses did not like it, but he kept on doing it every day, and ultimately got him fired, right? So he was just like, okay, I'm going to do exactly what I want to do. So most of the time when I am tweeting something and it doesn't relate to Jordan Peterson, I just drag him in. It's me trying to be funny. But however, there's a larger point to what I'm doing with Jordan Peterson. Of course, I don't think there's any meaningful interaction that we can have. I have the right to mock him. I think that yeah, I think that he's gone off the deep end, right? Especially on Twitter. They say Twitter brings out the worst in people, and Jordan Peterson is a perfect example of that. I don't even know whether it's Twitter that's brought out the worst in him. I think he's just a totally terrible, distasteful person on Twitter, right? And the reason why I'm even that, why I tackle him that much was because I thought that he had a lot of potential. I thought that he had a potential to be a reasonable voice, to maybe be a kind of a bridge between the warring sides. I thought he would somehow graduate into a wise old grandfather figure where all sides can come to. And then to see him devolve into this right-wing nut that he's become is just what's not to mock. I mean, there's plenty of things to mock him about, right? So it doesn't mean I totally disagree with everything he said. No, but I think I disagree a lot with his approach and some of the things he said. So that's just my thing with Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, but
It's
see, it's
more
also
it's
funny.
more it's more disappointment than anything else. Yeah.
Oh, it's just funny because I don't follow him, so I don't know what he's done. I only see
Oh,
you attacking
sure.
him. So looking at it from that way, it seems funny because I'm like, who are these? I mean, I know who he is, but like the tape, I'm like, oh, I don't understand. But whatever they did, he is not happy.
Yeah, he blocked me.
No, you don't say.
He
I would have
did.
blocked you too.
I would have blocked me too.
You would have blocked you too. Come on,
Yeah.
you had it coming.
Yeah, I did have it coming, right? Because I wasn't really going to stop. There was nothing was really literally nothing was going to make me stop. Nothing. I mean, short
And
of him
you're
blocking me,
blocked and you still don't stop.
I have still not stopped.
That's bad.
Because I'm like a piranha. Once I get fixated on something, I have to tear it tear it down till there's nothing there anymore. So I just think, of course, Twitter is not the best place to have certain nuanced, seasoned conversations. So it's just a place to have fun. Half of the things half of the tackle I tackle Barrington for, it's not because I disagree with his message, right? It's really not about his message. At times, it's just me messing with him. At times, it's just me saying, you are doing exactly, you're playing the race game, right? It's the race part mostly that gets me with Barrington, right? I remember the
But
time he
why
was,
him? He's not the only one.
yeah, he's not the only one,
There's a
but
lot of people that say they don't like the focus on race, and then they, use race as an example.
well, I don't follow them. I follow Barrington, so I see more of his tweets.
Touche. I'll send you a
Yeah,
couple so you can spread out the love.
yeah. I don't follow much people. I think I follow about 100 and something people on Twitter. So not
Probably
really
because you got
much.
blocked by all the rest of them.
No, just a couple of them. I can count them: Andrew Tate, um, Jordan Peterson, Jonathan Ernst Perkin, and I think one other person. About four of them. Yeah. So
That's not
with the Jonathan guy, he kept on complaining about white supremacy
that.
every time.
I'd never heard of him, and then in the last 2 weeks, his stuff started coming up in my feed.
Yeah, so I just kept on mocking the hell out of him, right? Like I do with the other. And the funny thing, he has a white mother, so I kept mocking him,
They
and
always
and
do. You didn't know that?
yeah,
Did you
I,
not
I
read my
told
book? They always do. Always.
I told him I told him,
Kaepernick.
like, why is it always the mixed race,
Go ahead.
light skinned people who think that they have something somehow to prove their blackness, right? I think the tweet that got me blocked from him was that he said he went out on a date, and then I tweeted, I said, was she white? You love the whiteys, right? So after that
Oh my
tweet,
God. He said yes, and then he blocked you.
he just blocked me. I was like, okay. So
Of course she was, Glock. Every good
so
pro-black revolutionary got to have a white sister on his side. I'm sorry. I'm kidding. I'm
so
joking. I can't say it on Twitter,
so
so I say it in podcast. I'm only
yeah.
kidding.
So
I'm just joking.
so I tackle everybody that I find ridiculous. If I just come,
So I should be
even
waiting
if
for. So pretty soon you're gonna start attacking me. You can't attack me. I don't
yeah,
tweet
if
enough.
you post if you post something
You
ridiculous, I
can't
will.
attack me. I don't tweet enough.
Yeah, you don't tweet
I
enough.
tweet
You do
pictures.
the memes.
Most of
You
my
do
here's,
you do the
here's
memes.
most of my tweets.
Yeah, yeah. That's most of your tweets. So maybe there's nothing there to attack
So
anyway.
what are you gonna
So
say? I didn't say anything. It's just a picture.
yep,
Don't get
yep,
mad at me.
yep.
Get mad at who are they? Who are my favorites? Kanye West, Will Smith, and Seth Meyers. Get mad at them, not me.
Kanye. I don't follow Kanye. I don't follow
Oh, I
Will
don't Kanye.
Smith.
That's just the gift I use when somebody when I tell them they shouldn't. They're shaming
Yeah.
me
I
for
see.
that tweet.
I see that. Yeah, especially the Will Smith stuff. I think you use the Will Smith and the Kanye a lot. Yeah, true.
Right.
So
Yep.
Twitter is a crazy place. It's just to have fun. It's not. It's
It
not.
is.
It's not really. Some people take it too seriously. I usually don't take it seriously. I'm just there to have fun, right? So,
Right.
there are some people I engage with, and when I see that they're responding positively, we can actually have a conversation, right? Um, for example, there was a guy I was chatting with, and he made the claim that certain races, commit crimes and they get away with it. And then I asked him, so which race and which example are you going to give me? He said black people. I said, so what example? He said, during the BLM riots, the BLM black people were rioting and there were no arrests. And then I pointed out to him that BLM riots wasn't just black people alone. I mean,
You should
they
say
were white.
who set up Chop.
Yeah, there were white people involved in it too. And then he flipped it where he now said he made it about Democrats and he made it about politics, right? Oh, that it's the liberals. I said, but you said certain races of people
Right.
commit crimes and get away with it, and your example was the BLM riots. So why are you flipping? So after then, we're able to have some reasonable conversation where I was able to bring him to a point to show that your original claim was baseless. It didn't make any sense. You just had something in your head and you tweeted it out, and if nobody challenged you on it. But initially, I would always respond with something snippy, right? So if the person responds in kind, we can continue, being snippy to each other. But if the person is, reasonable enough, then we can have a conversation. I don't think Barrington has never responded in a sort of reasonable manner to me. So most of the time, he either ignores or he makes something snippy too, and well, that it is what it is. I think he's a great guy anyway, so there's no animosity. It's just that
Right.
whenever I see
But in
his
that vacuum of Twitter, it's pretty funny when you see it. It's like, oh my God. And so, but yeah, the race thing is crazy because so many people, and that's one thing I do see a lot of. I see a lot of people, in order to push back from the left, they go even further and they say, well, look at the blacks and all that stuff. And then a lot of black conservatives feel they got to get on the other side to push back against that. But I'm just different because I'm like, I don't care. One, it's human nature. If you keep pushing people, they're going to push back. So even if the guy's racist, you're bringing out his racism by calling him a racist. And arguing him on Twitter is not going to make him less racist. So why do you care? I'm not gonna waste my energies. You know, I might do like you and follow up and say, so really? So all of the blacks are doing this? Well, like 50%. So half of the blacks are killing people. Okay. That's what makes, like clear. Like I just, with the immigration thing, I was posting clips from my interview with Tucker. And of course, yeah, you get those centrists who are people who hate Trump, MAGA, Carlson, whomever. And they want to dialogue about the thing, which is fine, except my issue is now we're getting away from the topic. The topic was, immigration. Tucker made this interesting point. And then they started talking about, well, why didn't you ask him this? But that's not what the tweet was
That
about.
was not what the conversation is about.
Right. And then they dig up all these things. Well, here's a news article that said that once Tucker said this. I'm like, why are we talking about Tucker? The tweet said, here, it's funny that this is in the media about this story. And here's Tucker talking about this story. And it became, and all the thread was all about immigration. And it's all about, well, but he's a racist. But I don't know if he is or not. But, I doubt it. But, I don't think he is. But if you think he is, so what? I don't know what that has to do with. So is he right in this clip? Well, he might be right, but why is there a but? Well, I don't trust him. Another one said. Why? Well, I don't trust anything he says. So if he told you it was Tuesday, you wouldn't. No, I'm not saying it's not true that it's Tuesday. If he told me it was Tuesday, I'll go to someone else to verify it's Tuesday before I believe it. I'm like, okay, that's stupid, but okay. You got the right to do it. I'm not here my job is not to defend Tucker. Tucker can defend himself. It was just a point. Now, I think that it's interesting that you are so blinded by your hate for him that you lost the point. That just seems funny to me.
Yep. So I think I have a question on that Tucker clip that you posted today. I think it was a 2-minute clip. All right. So you said you asked the Tucker a question about him being a white nationalist. What is a white nationalist? So what I found interesting about that clip was that he didn't answer the question. He answered another question, which is he was not a racist.
No, he asked the question. That was a clip. That's another thing I get. It's like, well, in the clip, I'm like, it's a clip of an hour and a half interview. Go listen to the whole interview.
No. Your title was you asking. You said this is Tucker's response to you asking if he's a white nationalist.
It was a joke about
a white nationalist, right? So he responded to, "Are you a racist?" He didn't respond to, "Are you a white nationalist?" Because I asked that question in your Twitter feed. I was like, "Is white nationalist equal to racist?" Because I don't think so. So he answered a different question. Is he a white nationalist?
Have you seen the interview?
I want to ask. No, I haven't.
I don't think it's possible to watch that interview and think he's a white nationalist.
Well, I'll check it out.
I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible.
Well,
right? But I mean, because that look, I think because the point was immigration, and then I just played that clip. When I put that clip, the people that get it, I figure somebody who like you who follows and sees enough of my tweets would get it. It was a joke. I was like, we even asked the tough questions. I was kidding. And then when they said that's not a tough question, I said, well, first, it was a joke. Secondly, I never asked against tough questions because we all have a role. Will push back because that's what he does. I don't invite people on to attack him. I've had people on I disagree with on everything, and I didn't attack them. So I agree with Tucker on more of the things than I agree with them. So if I didn't attack the socialists, why would I attack him? I'm just asking questions. If I don't agree with you, you know what I do? I ask enough follow-up questions to make it clear that you're saying what you're saying, so no one who defends you can say, well, that's not what he meant. I make it crystal clear that you meant what you said, and then I let the viewer or the listener determine whether what they said made sense or not. I don't say you're wrong, right? And I've had plenty of people on I disagree with, and I don't attack them. So why you thought I was going to bring Tucker on and attack him is silly, right? That was the other thing. But And then the other piece was like, well, you know, I mean, we talked about the clip, the thread was about immigration, right? We talked about two of his books. We talked about the Nation of Islam. We talked about specifically about black neighborhoods. We talked about a bunch of stuff, and they're only focusing on that clip. I'm like, go listen to the whole interview then.
Yeah, people are going to do that.
Right.
They're going to find the one thing that they think it's the smoking gun, and then they'll just run on it like a rabid dog.
I mean,
People
I
are
had
going
a
to do that.
socialist on. We had a socialist on who said she disagrees with everything we said. Had her on. Had the black guy on who robbed banks to give banks to the black community. I've interviewed, these two Japanese American ladies who are all in on. I've interviewed two DEI consultants. You know what I write about DEI? I didn't attack them. I asked, I become Columbo. I asked them questions like, but do you think this? And they're like, no. And I just say, okay. And I go to the next question. Now, I could have attacked, but I'm like, what's the point? I think what they said in this instance, let's say, assume, I don't remember which
But
clip.
do you
But
think
let's assume I think their
oh,
response was so crazy and so
mm,
openly racist. I might just say, you don't think some people may think that's racist? They'll reply, and then I move to something else. And then people on the right, well, you know what? Don't forget what you're about to say. But the last example is, I don't know if you can tell by my tweets my views on the trans issue. I think it's pretty clear. But that's the one topic that's laughable to me because I get attacked from both sides on that. And I don't get attacked about race and anything else. I got attacked for being, a trans ally and a trans supporter and pushing their narrative. And I've been called a transphobe. How can I be both?
yeah, you can be both depending on how people are seeing your tweets. I mean, I've seen the kind of attacks that this guy is getting.
Oh, no, this is because of the interview. It's because I interviewed a trans woman and I didn't
Mm.
attack him, didn't call him out, didn't say this, that, the
but
other.
but but
I just
but
said, well, what do
that's
you think about
but that's the point. As in,
Right, I'm supposed to. So I'm going
it's
to bring you
crazy.
on. This is not Jerry Springer.
Yeah, it's crazy. People think that it has to be attack or confrontational. Like the first time I heard a debate between Buck Angel and I think Charlie Kirk, right? Buck Angel was so reasonable. I went into the interview on the side of Charlie Kirk, but I came out thinking Kirk was a jerk. Like it was
Oh,
a
and they
dick.
debated. So I'm assuming it became antagonistic from Charlie's side,
Yeah,
right? But we
he
had
was
Buck
just
on. We had Buck on as an ally. We were like, we agree with everything you say. Because Buck was like, do whatever. I should be able to do whatever I want to do, but these kids should not be pushing that way. I'm fine with
exactly.
that.
Exactly. So Kirk was Kirk was coming with certain assumptions, right?
Right,
He wasn't listening. He just came with the standard narrative of this is what trans people believe and all that. And Buck was trying to make him understand that there are nuances to these things. Like Buck was telling him, you know what? I am a biological woman, right? There's nothing can ever change that. But this is how I feel. This is how I'm able to live with myself, right?
right,
This transitioning is what has made it possible for me to live. I'm not under any delusions that I'm a man biologically. I'm a
right,
woman biologically, but I've undergone transition into
right,
this, right? So Kirk was stuck because there wasn't anything to, really
right.
nothing to debate there,
So he
right?
just had to
So he
make up
had
an
to start
argument.
looking, yeah, he had to start looking for, and I was like, it doesn't have to be
See, a good
confrontational, right?
interviewer would have realized that we're now allies. Well, see, that's what you do. So what he should have done was follow up and say, so just be clear, you're saying this. And then what Buck said on our show, if he hadn't said it at that point, I would have got him saying it, would have said it. I would have said, so you're saying that you're living as a man and you look like a man, you present as a man because of surgeries, but you do it because of a mental disorder, right? You have a disorder that's causing you to feel comfortable in X, Y, Z. And Buck would have said, yeah. So I would have put a
Yeah.
fine point on it to make that clear. And then I would say, then we agree. And then I would have pivoted to what about kids? You would have agreed on that. And then I would say, walk away saying, then we have agreement. I may not
Hmm.
understand it, but you have the right to do it as a conservative. I'm assuming he's saying he's a conservative. I support your right to do whatever you want to do, as long as you're not pushing it on kids, as long as you're not forcing me to agree with it, as long as you're not making me pay for it. Knock yourself out, do whatever you want to do. And he could have left
Exactly.
it at that.
Exactly.
I never saw it, but
Exactly.
yeah. But so we
So
had Buck on, and then on my radio show I had Gina Roberts on. Gina had not had a surgery yet, and so they thought I humanized him and did all this other stuff, and that was the issue there. And so they attack me for it, right? But then when I have Chloe and Luca, the two detransitioners on, and then people are like calling me out as being a transphobe. I was like, well, which one is it? All I'm doing is I'm the interviewer. I am asking questions. And occasionally I say, well, don't you think?
Because people are looking for you to pick a side, right? I'm sure with the tone of my tweets, these days, many people will be thinking, oh, this guy is a left-leaning Democrat, liberal, all those stuff, right? They probably totally forgot the time when I was, mocking the Democrats. And the reason I'm doing this now is because, I think there's a shift in Twitter, right? Before, Twitter used to be a left-wing not place, right? Filled with, left-wing idiots, right? Now it's a right-wing not house, right? So the dynamics have totally shifted. So I'm going to be seeing more of
I don't know.
right-wing
I think it
nonsense.
depends on, it's all algorithms. I think it depends on who you follow.
Probably,
I
but
don't get a lot of that
that's
because I don't follow,
that's
and I
what
intentionally follow people on the left. So I don't get as much of it. I don't see it. I mean, I know other people who tell me about it, but I think it's
mm,
algorithms, who you reply to, who you follow, and that kind. That's why I make it a point to agree with people on the left enough so that to fool the algorithm in a sense. So you can't say, well, this guy only likes this people. So
maybe that's my
I'll
bad
reply to
because
people and say whatever. Like
I
somebody
I
tweeted the
follow.
other day. Somebody tweeted some conservative tweeted something about a politician in Denver saying reparations is not enough. Whites need to redistribute something else. We need to
Yeah, I
hire
saw that.
blacks
I
first or
saw
something
that.
like that. And I was like, I agree. I think that's true. So what is the Twitter algorithm going to say about that?
They're going to
I'm
think
just
you
like,
like
no, they're
things like
right.
that, and they're going to show you more stuff
Right.
like
So
that.
now I'm
Yeah.
a leftist
So
now,
so
right? So now they're going to start feeding me stuff that leads to that.
yeah,
Because I
true,
want to see
true.
what everybody's saying. I mean,
Mm,
it's
mm.
hard though, but
I think maybe that's where my part of my problem comes from, right? Because I follow mostly conservative accounts, and when I see the nonsense, even if I'm following you, if you post any nonsense, I'm going to push back, right? I'm not just going to let it fly because oh, this is a conservative person. Probably that's why I'm seeing more of
yeah,
the
that's
right
probably
wing
why.
nonsense right now. So yeah,
I know it's
so
painful. You got to go follow some leftists, but don't do the politicians. Follow like I'll send you some people. Follow some a couple celebrities, not too much because they're really crazy. But then you'll see who they follow, and you'll see some other people to follow. Follow a couple of the media
yeah,
personalities. Follow some of them. You'll get some. They're interesting, is because I get what you mean by the extremists on the right, but they're both extreme, but they're different. Like what you get from a left is they will spin everything into politics. So you'll say, which restaurant has the best burger? And then their response will be something about Trump or Republicans. I'm like, why are you talking about Republicans? Just asking about burgers, dude. Just burgers. Why we, it's kind of funny, but
so for me, I sum the extremes on both sides into two words. For the left, I think they're full on delusional, right? They're just delusional. For the right, they are full on retarded. I mean, those guys are the right wing nuts, the extreme right
I
wing
don't think you
people.
can say
Like
retarded. I don't
they
think you,
are retarded. I
I don't
mean,
think you can say that word.
very low IQ retarded. Yeah, like 40 points or less than. That's the extreme right. I'm not saying the right there, like people on the extreme right, because when you see some kind of arguments that they just bring in, you'll be like, good lord, where is this nonsense coming from? So that's the way I've summed them up. The extreme left is delusional, the extreme right retarded.
Well, I guess, and I know many people. There's some agree with me, and a lot of people would disagree with me. Especially the people I fight the most with, which is not the left or right. I don't really have a problem with the left, really. I disagree with them, but most of my fight is in the middle. That's who I get into most of the back and forth with. Is because, like, if you look at the show, like I just said, I don't uh, argue or get into it with my guests. The only time I did was with someone who was kind of like, "This is bad," but look at the other side, because I am so I mean, I'm in it and I see it every day. I'm so bothered with the physical change of what's happening, right? The push to change to what did Obama say? To fundamentally transform, right? So I can disagree with the right on a lot of stuff, but right now it could change. They are not trying to, nor have the power to fundamentally transform. So I ignore them. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe down the road I will have to do a mea culpa and say I was wrong to do so. But I am more concerned by the people who control the levers of entertainment, media, all the levers, and can dictate, rights or wrongs and get people canceled and that kind of thing. And the people who control the schools and are dictating what my son is learning in school. And those people are, like you say, a lot of them, too many of them are true believers. They're not just doing it for political wins. Some of them are. Some of them really believe it. And they will do everything they can to change everything about society. So those are the people I'm more concerned with. So I find myself getting upset at other people who agree with me on how bad all that stuff is. But then they want to spend their time like you, arguing about, Jordan Peterson and all these people, right? So those are the people I get upset with, right? And it's not you, because you don't do it. I don't mean the way you do it. What I mean is, but they're like you, but they take it a step further. So they agree with me on how bad the left is, but they don't like, let's say, Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate, right? So they're like you. Here's the difference. But when I because I know this is different because you don't respond, you haven't responded to my post. When I respond something like my article, the Tucker clips, some other stuff, they'll be like, yeah, that might be bad, but what about that time in '86 when Nixon said this? They have to go tie it to a conservative. But that's not even the topic. I'm talking about, should a 9-year-old should a kid be taken from his parents because they don't want, because you say parental rights, because they don't want their kids to have this, gender, to take these hormones. And the state is saying they should. And so they're in this battle, and the state wants to take the kid from the parent who doesn't want them to do it, saying it's child abuse. Is that okay? And their reply would be, but the right. Can we stay on the topic? I don't care what you think about the right. That's fine, but that's not the topic.
But you see that thing, you see this thing you just described. This is what infuriates me about Twitter, because that's basically that's the whataboutism everybody is doing on Twitter. And frankly speaking, the right does it too, right? So when someone is talking about,
but the right does not control the levers.
It does it matter who controls the levers?
Hell,
right?
Yes.
The right wants to. The right wants to control the levers too.
100%. I have no argument there. Everybody wants to, because they all want power. But right now,
whether or not you control,
I got skin in the game. You don't have skin in the game. Only one side is sending emails to me from the government directly saying, Blacks learn differently, so we're going to start teaching them culturally relevant math and English. So we want to close the gap, and the only way we can close the gap is to teach Blacks the way they can learn the math, by snapping and having music so they get to it, right? Only one side's doing that. Only one side is telling my kid he can change his gender. Only one side. It ain't the right. So you can sell me like I'm going to call him out, like Brett Stevens tried to sell me all the problems with Trump. And my response could be wrong. This is my personal response. It's going to be, so I have to deal with the reality of my life today. And the reality of my life today, the only people personally trying to harm me right now is left. Right? The only people in my city, forget about that guy who got choked. Right? We already discussed that. But the only people who, in theory, are saying, let people out of jail, it's the left. The only people who are saying, yes, he shot somebody. But here's the hypocrisy. It's 2 layers of hypocrisy. We are anti-gun. I don't have a problem with you being that. If you can convince enough Americans to repeal the Second Amendment, repeal it. I don't have a problem with that. I know that's rare for people like me to say. You got to convince the people, don't cheat, but you can convince them, repeal it. But as of right now, that's the law of the land, right? But you don't like it. You want it gone. You have the right to do that in the free society, okay? But then at the same time, you don't want people to own guns. When a man owns a gun illegally, and he not even shoots somebody, he just brandishes it, but he happens to be Black, you don't want him in jail. I would think that's the person you want in jail. Not only, you don't even want guns to be purchased legally. This guy went beyond that and got it illegally and pointed it at someone. You're like, well, we got to determine what his home life is like. There's, structural racism you got to consider. No. So the fact that a guy who's brandishing a weapon can be released from jail with no bail because someone thinks it's better to have a black violent person on the street than to contend with the racist society. Only one side is doing that, Charles.
Yep.
So more criminals on the street affects me. The changes in education affect me. All of these things they're doing to the culture affects me personally.
Mm.
Trump sleeping with prostitutes and paying them doesn't affect me.
Mm.
And when Trump was president, you know what I said when Trump was president? The problem is, and I think I played a clip when we had Jennifer Say on. I said, the problem with Trump, my biggest problem with Trump wasn't even what I disagreed with him on, right? It's what I agree with him on. And you tell me what you think about this, Charles. My point was, where I disagree with him, there were so many people that were against him. I'm not saying he was right all the time, but the people literally hated him, right? He was literally Hitler. So all the left hated him. But even there were, what do they call them? Never Trumpers. So there were people on the right who didn't like him, right? So they don't like him. So there were enough people in the media and in government who would push back against extreme measures. And we have plenty of examples of that. Remember, he had the press conference. He's like, maybe we should take people gun, whatever. Whatever he says, they're going to attack. But when he says something that's sensible, the rabid Trump haters are also going to attack that. So I said on air a year and a half ago, when Trump came out and said, we need to do whatever we can, that schools must be open. I said, no, I screamed no, because I knew my son was not going to see the inside of a school. Even if the science said open the school, they weren't going to open it now because they can't make that guy right.
Mm.
And that was my problem. So even when he was president, I was like, when he said something, he said a lot of crazy stuff. I'm like, but he's not going to get it done. So why would I lose sleep over it? But when he says something that makes sense, now I'm concerned because now they're going to fight to stop that too. I would argue that we have more illegals here now because they were so hell-bent against him, and that was like his number one thing to run on. They were like, if we can make him look bad on that, yay, we make him look bad. Damn the consequences.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think? What do you think? My overall impression of Trump is. What do you think I think of Trump from
I don't
my
know.
Twitter
Based on
interaction?
what I see and what you tweet, I think it's like Barrington. You'd be like, it's not that he's right, but not that he's wrong. But I don't like his approach, and I don't like the way people worship him. But I don't think that one's fair because that's not him, right? You can't blame other people. It's like I thought it was weird, but I know you kind of think like me in some way. So I think it's weird when a guy's running for office, for the national office, he's trying to get all the votes he can, and they were like, David Duke endorsed you. You should renounce his endorsement. Why? I want everybody to vote for me. Doesn't mean I want his policies, but hell yeah, I want David Duke to vote for me. Obama should have wanted David Duke to vote for me. So that's a little weird. So I can't really pinpoint what your views are on that. I know you don't like it. So I would assume you don't like the worship of him. You think he's a crazy narcissist. But I would think on the whole, you don't think he's wrong about everything.
Exactly. So there is sort of an evolution, right? 2016, I first came across Trump in 2016, and it was CNN that introduced him to me. I mean, they were saying all these crazy things about Trump. Is that. I was like, who is this American politician that is saying all these crazy things, right? I mean, can anyone survive in American politics with such things? And then I just immediately, when I started, following the guy, and I was like, they're not so crazy. The things they're saying, this guy is saying, is really not that crazy, right? So I was sort of an ardent supporter of Trump, right? I thought he was a very effective tool against the insanity of the left, right? So there were so many insanities of the left. I thought Trump was a bulwark against, right? So up until January 6th, 2020.
Wow,
Right. So
that
that
far.
was, yeah,
Wow.
that was when my perceptions about him began to change a little bit. But even after January 6th, I was still solidly behind this guy. But what broke it for me was his attack on Ron DeSantis
DeSantis.
and Candace Owens. Yep.
I
So
didn't even know he
there was a
attacked
clip.
Candace Owens.
Oh, he did. So there was one, I watched one of Candace's videos where she was saying that she said she was actually she said something, but it was in defense of Trump, right? Someone misconstrued what she said and fed it to Trump. And the next time Trump saw her, Trump did not bother to clarify or anything. He was just being a dick to her, right? He was just deliberately being disrespectful to her. And I was like, so someone who supported you for how much of a narcissist can you be that someone who supported you for this long, right? You heard something about them and you didn't even bother to fact check. And how can you be that disloyal? So that was one point. Then the other point was his unnecessary attacks on Ron DeSantis. I was like, you know, what has Ron done to you anyway? And then he's increasingly becoming, with all his NFT stuff, with the crazy things he does on Truth Social. I was like, man, this guy is really becoming something. I think that he's put himself above whatever the MAGA thing is, the Make American Great Again movement that he sort of championed, right? He's made it about himself. Then with the Trump worship, with the Trump cultists that you see on Twitter who feel that no, Trump can do no wrong. He's the only messiah. If Trump doesn't get into power, the world is going to come to an end and stuff like that. So that's why I'm like, no, not really. I think I think he's done for. I think he missed an opportunity. And going back, right? So many of the things that Trump campaigned on, he never did any of them. He said he's going to build the wall. Well, he didn't do that. He said he was going to drain the swamp. Well, he swam in the swamp, right?
Well,
So you've got to ask, right? So if you couldn't get some basic things, he claimed that he was rigged out of office. How much of a dumbass can you be to be in power and then be rigged out of office? If we're to believe what he said, how incompetent do you have to have the levers of power and then be rigged out of office? And then I was even hopeful that after the election, maybe something substantial would really come out to show that Trump was rigged. This guy did nothing. He was busy golfing. There was nothing substantial. The only person who came out with something which was still nonsense anyway, was this Dinesh D'Souza. Nothing came from the Trump camp to show that there was actually, massive rigging or whatever going on. So he didn't have anything. So all those just began to change my perception of the guy. I was like, no, this guy is not really worth it. It's not it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
guess we're
So
gonna
that's
have
my
to end on the Trump note. We hit it right at 2.
Yep, yep, yeah. So Charles Love, thank you very, very much. It's been it's been a pleasure talking with you. I hope we can do this again, right? So my conversations, I hope you didn't think I was attacking you, right? I was trying to push back, right? I don't really attack people, right? So but we got heated at a point. So it wasn't attack, it was just a pushback for trying to get your points across. I'm trying to get my points across. And I think overall it was a good one. There are a few other points that I would have loved us to cover, but we're pressed for time. So if it happens again that we have another conversation, then we can go through all of that, right? So thank you very much for coming. Any final words for this conversation before we leave?
Sorry for all the noise. It's New York. They love the honk horns. No, I mean it's always good to chat with you. I mean, you know, I don't mind a little bit of crazy, but no, it was good. I
Yeah,
appreciate
you wrote Race Crazy, so yeah.
it. I did.
Yeah, guys, you should totally check out Charles's book, Race Crazy. Yeah, so
Thank you.
right. So that will be all for now. Thank you very much, Charles, and see you later.
Yep.
Bye.